All right, I will call the meeting to order. And we need a motion to excuse Anne-Marie and Wayne. Moved by Kelly. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And we'll even adopt the agenda, or adopt the minutes, I should say, in order on this one. Ellen? Bug Clarence somehow, don't we? Although the rest of us just sat here going, yeah, right, we're all cool here. Ellen's moving the adoption of the minutes. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. For post-agenda items, Kevin has indicated that there will be a legal in-camera item. Are there any other items? Seeing none, could I get a motion to adopt the agenda? Clarence. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And just a comment, item 6, you notice a question period, notice of motion. That has been moved from the end of our agenda to the beginning because that is going to be the spot for public participation. If someone wants to come in and ask us a question, that's what that's all about. So public hearings are at 11:30, of course, and so we will move through Yes, we can go to item A2. Is that right? That's second and third reading. That is not anything to do with a public hearing, correct? Got back information from
So this bylaw has been through the public hearing process. It has been referred to Alberta Transportation. They have responded. Council is in a position to proceed with second and third reading.
Right. All right. Do we have a motion for second reading? Lionel moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And for third and final reading, Hubie moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to item 8.3.
This particular bylaw is the Intermunicipal Collaboration Framework Agreement with the MD of Taber. Council has given first reading to this. Between first reading and it coming back for second, there has been a couple of edits that have been made to it. First of all, when Council reviewed the bylaw the first time through, there were 3 minor edits that Council had identified. Those have been made to it. Also, the MD of Taber had asked that 2 additional edits be inserted as well, pertaining to the dispute resolution or conflict process, and also recognizing that Highway 36 is a priority for both jurisdictions. Really no reason why Council shouldn't proceed with second and third reading of this particular agreement. One other thing to point out, that a motion has already been made to approve the original agreement. We would need to have a motion to just approve the revised agreement because it is slightly different because of those changes that we have discussed.
So the first thing we would need to do is approve the agreement as amended.
Correct, and then go ahead with second and third reading of the bylaw.
Yeah. Any problems with that, Clarence?
I'll move the amended agreement.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And then we could move to giving second reading to this amended agreement. Tracy moves. Second reading. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And final reading. Kelly moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
The next bylaw on the agenda is the Regional Subdivision Development Appeal Board Agreement bylaw. The county and the city have been parties to an agreement to establish a Regional Subdivision Development Appeal Board. The other three urban communities had previously set up their own SDAB, and there has been agreement in principle to move ahead now with establishing one regional that serves all 5 municipalities. So that's where we're at on this one. What we would ask council to do is give first reading to this bylaw. And I guess it would also be appropriate, of course, to approve the agreement as well through a resolution.
So 2 motions. Okay. So the first one to approve the amended, this is an amended agreement again too, right?
Correct, because we did have one with the city of Brooks before.
So I call for a motion for that to begin with. Lionel, to approve this amended agreement, revised agreement. Questions, comments? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And then for first reading of a bylaw. For this first reading for the bylaw, yeah. Hubie? Hubie moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. So we're only going to do the first reading, Lane, for that one?
Yeah, there's no need to rush it through today.
Okay.
I think it would be appropriate to wait and make sure that the other communities are also getting first reading as well.
All right, so that takes us to a bylaw of our own, only involving us, that we can move for 3 readings, which is the municipal addressing.
Okay, as the report indicates, in 2009, the county initiated a municipal addressing bylaw and system throughout the county. That was back when the county was still County of Newell number 4. So there's been a number of changes that are required to this particular bylaw. Really what it's reflecting is what has evolved as practice for the application of that system. Initially, when the bylaw was approved in 2009, there was consideration given to having the landowners responsible for some aspects of what we've been doing. What we're wanting to do now is make sure that the bylaw that serves as the governing document for that rural addressing system is current, up to date, and it is before you for 3 readings today.
So, someone want to move first reading? Brian?
Well, I actually have a question that goes along with, I'd move it, but I just have a curiosity as far as how many signs over the years that have needed to be replaced because of the stuff you outlined, either removal or damage. I know there has been a case, at least one in my division, where somebody removed it or placed it on the other side of the driveway. Is that an issue that if they do that, or is that I'm just curious what the numbers are like.
Good question on the actual number of signs that have had to be replaced. There certainly were, after the signs were initially installed, some of them were moved from where they were originally installed to a more suitable location in close proximity to the driveway that was more in line with where the property owner wanted it in the first place. That's not so much of an issue. I would have to find out how many signs have actually had to be outright replaced because they have either been removed altogether or damaged beyond repair. When we initially put this through, the county undertook full responsibility for installing all of the signs, and it was more or less an arbitrary decision. Here's where it's going to be, and some property owners did take exception to where it was initially placed and have moved the sign and posted it on a fence or trees or something else in close proximity to their driveway. What we're wanting to do with this particular bylaw is provide some additional flexibility so that that can be taken into consideration. The most important thing is making sure that the properties are signed and addressed accordingly. It's not quite so critical for us to make sure that it's placed on the T-bar posts in the exact same location for every property. I can inquire to see how many signs have had to be replaced. I don't have that information right off the bat here right now.
And that's not necessary. I don't want you to go through that effort to find that out for me. But I guess in continuing this part of it, how is this, if somebody is removing a sign, and is it charged back to them, and if they refuse, is it can it be put on the tax roll, or how is it done?
It's I anticipate, looking within the bylaw itself, I'm sure that there is provisions in here for a violation ticket to be served if they aren't adhering to the provisions of the bylaw. So yeah, $250 penalty can be applied if they aren't adhering to the bylaw, which requires the signs to be placed and not removed or willfully destroyed.
And item 11 says that they can charge the sum against the land concerned as taxes due. Lionel?
So like in Westland Acres, for instance, all the houses are numbered, but in a yard, agricultural yard, there could be more than one residence. Do you have numbers on those also on the individual houses? Because if emergency services was called and had to go to one particular house and there's nobody home, and the other one, does that get confusing for them, or is it necessary to do that?
Good point. And the examples that you've given are valid. In the Westland Acres, each is an individually titled lot within that development. And so each house in Westland Acres has an actual assigned number posted on their house. In the rural areas, you can have 2 or 3 residences on the same property. The driveway where those residences are normally signed so that there is the approach number, and then there's an A, B, C, however many dwellings there are in each yard. We don't go into the property and require each house to have an A, B, or C on it, but the sign at the driveway has those identifying features so that it's clearly understood that there are more than one residence in that yard site.
Clarence?
Do we actually monitor whether there's signs at every residence, or is that just kind of hit and miss?
Well, when we went through the setting up the system in 2009, we did the installation, so we knew that all of them that should have had a sign, there were signs installed for them. We have done a periodic audit since then, do a spot check, and go through and make sure that, as per the audit process, that those properties that have been part of the audit process, that there are signs at those locations. No, we do not go through and do a complete review on a regular basis of the entire county. As people are patrolling areas, if there are signs that have been observed to be removed or no longer in place, we have processes in place that provide for new signs to be ordered and installed.
Follow up signs that were put and then the yard disappears. We don't worry about that.
That's actually a good question, because we don't have in place demolition permits that are required. So quite literally, yards could be removed, and the only way we really find out about it is through the assessment process, where eventually those structures are removed from the assessment records. And in those situations, it's quite possible that a sign could still be sitting there at an approach where facilities have been removed altogether. So that's a good point.
It worked out pretty well over the years, really. The problems, I think, have been minimal. Tracy, did you have your hand up?
I was just going to make the comment, I know when we did my road tours, that was one of the things that we looked for, was the addressing signs. And then we just made a note if we noticed one was missing, and so they could follow up on it.
I think most people who were anti-sign back then have probably come around. It's really not a big deal in your life, I hope. All right, Brian has made a motion for first reading. Any other questions? All in favor of first reading? Opposed? Motion is carried. Motion for second reading would be appropriate. Ellen moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And a motion for consent for third reading. Clarence moves. All in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that motion is unanimously carried, which moves us to third reading. Motion for third reading. Tracy moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Perfect. Todd, you're just right on time. I can't believe it. It's just like clockwork. You're magic. Join us, please.
I won't take up much of your busy time today because I see you have a packed full delegation agenda. So. But just a quick verbal report, let everybody know kind of where we're at. I think roadside spraying is all but done. Harold took some holidays, Kim's been gone for a few days, so I think we're just kind of recouping a little bit. If there's anything you guys notice that's a little extra dirty that we need to take care of in your travels, we're kind of watching as well, but outside of a few small areas here and there, I think we're done. We did the first pass of mowing, and it's done today, actually. All 3 mowers will be in by 1:30. So that's exciting. They're going to quickly do a service and head back out, and we're not exactly sure how we're going to do it yet. Some of the areas are a little drier than others, so we might try to tackle them first, all 3 mowers going to an area. So you might see taller weeds and grass for a few days, and then all of a sudden it's going to be gone. So we're just trying to figure out how to do it with maybe getting some fire watch, maybe have a truck go with kind of thing. But to make it be the most efficient, we think we can work 3 mowers in one area with 1 or 2 trucks instead of 1 truck per mower. So we're going to try it, I think. I guess we talked a little bit before about the strychnine review. We did send out some letters to the people that have purchased it. We had 208 people that have purchased it since 2011. So we sent them all a letter, and I've been getting a little bit of feedback. I guess I had a few farmers that have called, and we've discussed it, and I think it's great. It shows that there was some interest on their part to even call me. I just hope that they take our recommendations and, you know, go forward to PMRA with their thoughts as well, good, bad, or otherwise. And then I think the letter is still here that we kind of put together for to send to the MLA and MP.
Signed it last week.
Oh, last week? Okay, I was gone for a few days.
Yeah, it got signed last week, so I'm
Okay.
assuming it's gone. Mariana, yeah.
And then I've been working with, if everybody remembers Maureen Vadney, she used to be our ASB program coordinator, and we're kind of trying to compile the different research that we've done to send some verbiage to PMRA, and I think I'll definitely bring that back to this table for sure, because we want that to come from the County of Newell. There's obviously different research on different sides of the story, and so we're just kind of trying to compile that all so it makes some sense. Maureen's been a big help. She's a much better writer than I am. So that's exciting. The Real Beautification Tour, that was a couple weeks ago, Friday 27th. We had, I think, 42 participants. Everybody had a wonderful day. I think if anybody's been down to Emerson, it's been an awesome year this year. The grass is still green. We've irrigated a lot, and we're going to continue to. We're filling the dugout right now. We have a wedding coming up in a couple of weeks, so we're pretty stoked about that. We're expecting about 250 people at the wedding, so that's pretty cool. And of course, there's always lots of other people down there, so that's good. The only bad part about Emerson, the cell tower's been down for most of the summer, and we finally figured out that it got struck by lightning, and the repeater, the outside of the repeater, isn't working. So the signal was getting into the park, but nothing was collecting it going the other way. So I don't know, I'm not great at technology, but my understanding is the new thing is going in today, and we'll be able to make phone calls again from down there. So that's exciting. We are out spraying some milkweed and thistles, county properties and ditches and all that kind of stuff. We have a truck on the 36 highway. It was getting a little bit out of control, so we worked with Volker on that. So we're pretty excited, make things look good. We're going to be doing, if anybody wants to plant trees out at the Aqueduct Trout Pond, we're going to do that on September 22nd. We partnered with the TD Bank. They have a program called the TD Tree Days, and they give you money to plant trees. So we're going to plant somewhere in the range of 150 to 170 trees, kind of actually right around where most people go to the Aqueduct Trout Pond, where the actual access is, kind of provide some cover and hopefully, benefit some of the wildlife out there. So that's September 22nd. Make sure you all bring a shovel, and we'll plant some trees. We're working with the EID on it and ACA, and then the TD Bank does most of the volunteer finding. So I think it'll be a great partnership, maybe get some different people involved than what we're normally working with. This is the time of year where we start saying goodbye to some of our seasonals. I'm not sure why schools decide they need to start, end of August, but we lose a kind of a week's worth of productivity out of our crew. So that's kind of bad for us, but great for them. I imagine when it's plus 41 outside, they're ready to be done tomorrow, but we've been working, they were mostly in at 5:30 this morning. They'll all be gone home to be in their air conditioning by 2:30, 3 o'clock. We can't do much when it's 35 degrees. When you work physically, I think everything else is kind of on track. Our Hamlet maintenance is good to go, and we've been kind of paying a little more attention to some of our subdivisions. We kind of own some of the right-of-way, so we've been, just double-checking that everything's looking okay. We did a little weed control in the Charles subdivision, and kind of just trying to figure out where some of that fits into our program. We want to maintain the roads, but we don't know that we have enough to do all of the subdivisions. So some of the ratepayers do it themselves, some of them ask us for help, and we're open to both situations. So, and that's about all.
Thanks, Todd. Questions? Lionel?
Yeah, Todd, did you get a different mower this year? I noticed they did a particularly good job on the roads around my place this year. Just wondered, is it a little bit wider unit, or is it seem to go down into the burrow pit further, or maybe it was just the operator, I'm not certain.
Yeah, unfortunately every year is completely different. So sometimes there might be water in a ditch, sometimes there's so many different variables. They try to get that entire mower down in the ditch all the time. The benefit of every second year is that we spray first and then mow. So oftentimes the weeds in the grass are just hindered at least even a little bit, and they're a little drier when we mow, and that allows us to do a better job of mowing the first pass when the stuff's a little drier. But our operators are, I think we've got a 6-year operator, a 5-year operator, and a 4-year operator. So they know their areas quite well. They know where they can push the limits and where they have to stay up a little bit. And yeah, they're pretty good at what they do. But thanks for the comment.
Totally agree. Brian?
2 questions. One on the gopher poison. I know a guy that he bought some, and I think he bought it at UFA where it's a premix, like it's a 5 to 25 kg bag. Are they using strychnine in that too, or is that a different product?
So I think there's a few different products that you can buy at UFA, or at least used to. They used to sell a dry strychnine bait, and it was still 0.4%, but it was a dry strychnine on oats. And I don't think that one's registered anymore. And the other one that you would be able to buy is Rosol, and that's the multi-feed bait that we used in the Lake Newell Resort and Rolling Hills to control some gophers. So the old 0.4% strychnine dry bait, it was okay, but it wasn't as palatable as what it needed to be for gophers, so they often rejected it and didn't eat it. And that was one of the downfalls of the dry bait. That's why the liquid strychnine that we sell, you mix it, it's immediately on the oats, it's immediately on the oats, put it down the hole, and it's immediately consumed. So it's really effective that way, where the dry product sometimes it's made, it's stored at UFA, it's maybe stored in the garage for the shop for a while, and then it's put out, so it's just not fresh. And that's the problem with not having a fresh bait.
Yeah, and this was, when you said Rosol, he said it was Rosol. But they do use strychnine in there? Okay. So
there's 2 different, so the 0.4% dry was a 0.4% dry strychnine base bait. And then the Rosol is chlorphacinone. We looked this up last couple of times ago. I think it's chlorphacinone in there. And that's it's a multi-feed rodenticide.
Right. So that won't be affected by, should this legislation go through with the ban on strychnine? Okay. Just different options, right? I know that the customer wasn't terribly impressed, but I was just curious whether that had strychnine in it or not. I'd never seen the label, but I just thought I'd ask. And the other question I had was Riverwalk. Anything jump out as far as what you found down there this year, as far as different weeds or influx of the same ones, or dealing with the same old, or was there new ones? Any snakes?
Well, I can't speak to the snakes. I didn't hear anybody say that. And we typically don't see much because we kind of do the Rolling Hills area first, because that's typically where we see them. And when I say first, I mean we do a little bit more pre-work in Rolling Hills, and then we start our picking in Bazzano. But anyways, we used to spend quite a bit more time on chamomile. Chamomile is prohibited noxious for us, so we want to destroy all of the plants. That's very important. What we've noted is that we had to walk past and drive past many other noxious species, just because if we tried to control everything at the same time, we wouldn't have had the resources to do that. So we concentrated on the prohibited noxious ones, and now we've got the chamomiles down to a manageable level. So we took and spent considerable more time on weeds like yellow toad flax, black henbane, which it's relatively new for the Bow River for us. That's kind of popped up in the last 5 to 6 years. We have some burdock down there where the guys are grazing. What else is down there? Stretching my memory a little bit. One new one that's, common tansy is another one that's kind of becoming more prevalent down there. And the new one that we found this year was, it was a thistle. Plumeless thistle. And that's a restricted weed, or prohibited noxious weed as well. We knew that one was coming. Wheatland County has noted it on their side before, so we kind of expected it to be showing up. So when we know things are coming, we try to educate everybody that's down there, and they did find some, so that's not great. The good news is that the chemical that we use down there is great up to the water's edge, not up to 1 meter from the water's edge, and it is effective on all of those species. So at least we don't have to carry, 3 or 4 different chemical mixes. We can kind of be selective with the same one. So, Clearview or Restore 2. They're both the same chemical. Just one's agricultural and one's industrial.
Other questions? No other questions, Todd, by the look of things? Oh, Lionel's got something.
That date again for the tree planting?
September 22nd.
September.
It's a Saturday. I'm thinking we're going to do it like 9 to 12 or something like that. Depending on how many volunteers, we should be able to plant 150 trees in an hour. It's not a lot of trees, so.
You can remind us again before then? 6:20. Some in our daytime or something. It's something that night called Rubies and Cufflinks, too. You guys get your invitations in your mail? Thank you, Todd. And Ariane, we don't adopt anything because it's oral report. All right. We have at 11 o'clock a delegation. It's not quite here yet, so we won't start without them. I hear the door. That's probably them. Otherwise, if they are here, we will go, aren't here, we'll go to the public reserve funding request next, which is the old request from Kathy Raymer.
Yes, this is a follow-up to an approval that had been previously granted in 2007. The work was never completed for a number of reasons, and Kathy has submitted a request wanting to know whether or not the funding could now be made available to relocate these pillars to another location, which would be the actual entrance going into the facility that is that is still serving the community. So I guess the question is whether or not Council is prepared to grant a new approval for the relocation of those monuments, the entrance into the crop disease research facility. $2,400 is the amount that was originally approved.
Questions? Who was here in 2009 and remembers this one? 07. Oh, I guess just Anne Marie and I just me today, yeah. It was a lively discussion at the time, and but it was approved and never called upon to be paid because there seemed to be obviously a problem. Evergreen Park was the desired location, and obviously that isn't working, and so they've come up with another idea, which is good before the thing falls down, probably. Brian?
Well, I think if a previous council made a commitment like this and something that's historic, I certainly would support it. And if you need a motion to do that, but I guess that is a bit of a question for me. If something's approved by a previous council, why would we need to reapprove it?
In this particular situation, it was originally approved to be located in at a site that is not now going to be used for the placement of those monuments. They're putting them elsewhere. And so the original application was for funding to locate them at a specific site. It is a different location, different application.
So that's why we need to do another motion, I guess. So. And Brian, were you were making that motion?
I would make that motion that basically option 1 Approved motion to allocate public funds for the relocation of the original CDC Hort facility monuments to the current entrance.
Further discussion? Clarence?
When I first read it, I was all in favor of it too, but now I'm starting to think, now we're putting entryways to another corporation, like basically a sign. So I kind of think, should we be doing that or shouldn't we? Before it was historical, it's still historical, but doesn't the organization itself have some responsibility to questioning it?
You mean the CDC? Did they not agree to this? And didn't I read that?
Well, the department has approved the placement of them at the new entrance, but they're not providing any funding for it. So the group that's involved in this now and trying to preserve these historical features are wanting to follow through, make sure that they are being preserved, but they need to generate the funds to do so.
Alan?
I wonder if there's provincial money for this. I know in other countries they supply that. Historical events, like, monuments like this.
It's my understanding, based on the information that Kathy has submitted, is that because they're going to be relocated, once it's relocated from where it originally was, it loses the historical status. So in that sense, there most likely isn't any historical funding available for the preservation of them.
Any other questions? Personally, I don't think it matters where they go. Just get them moved before they fall down and are gone forever, because they are sort of historic. It's not a huge amount of money, and as Brian pointed out, there was a council at one time that approved it, so I don't have a problem with it. Kelly?
Struggling with putting it into words. I feel like there's information missing, like $2,400 isn't going to do it to start with.
No.
And even the comment in the letter was, we're not even sure if this is going to move. So it could be $2,400 for nothing, but as you point out, I'm just struggling with it for sure. It's not a lot, but it is an amount, and it is for a government agency rather than for a not-for-profit agency. So that weighs into my decision as well. Yeah, it's a tough one.
Well, it looks like Kathy has gone out and got quite a bit of support from other people, other businesses, other interested parties. So, yeah. Anyhow, we have a motion on the floor. Any other discussion? All in favor of the, Ellen.
Could we put a, what is the word I'm looking for, on it, a restriction on it that if it's not being moved, the money comes back? Just a thought.
That the money sat there for the last number of years, 9 years, or what is it? You said 07? Oh, 11 years. It's been sitting there. It hasn't been moved. The money's been sitting there. So I'm sure it will continue to sit until it gets moved. Yeah. All right. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion is carried. All right. Thank you. We'll move back to our 11 o'clock item. Welcome, Jennifer, and we moved on a little bit because so we'll move back to item 991. Okay.
I'll just bring up the map, and then Jennifer asked if she could speak to council, and then I have some information to add afterwards.
Okay.
Okay, so back in April, after we had our fire in our home, we came in, we talked to Shanley about the bylaw restrictions of replacing our mobile home. At that time, Alice was brought into our office. She informed us that the land, we measured out this piece of land. She informed us that the land would have been about $1,500 to purchase. With saying that, we again came into her office and we got the application for this road closure. And again, she verified it was roughly about $1,500. At the last council meeting, and I don't see it in the council notes, she informed us that it was a $13,000 purchase of land. You guys requested that she get that reevaluated, as, you know, it seems very, very high for a 0.35 of an acre. She came back to us and she said that the evaluation came out to $18,000 roughly. Now, with saying that, we're kind of at a standstill here because for this motion to be carried, we were told a totally different figure. After polling numerous real estate reports about just open land, we came to the conclusion that it should be roughly about $1,936 as per listing that was listed yesterday. So we are here to talk to you guys about why the difference. And also I brought pictures on that land. There's no other, there's no power to that parcel of land. There's no water to that parcel of land that we know of. We haven't got it surveyed yet. I did bring pictures. There's also a fence that we would have to contact a lawyer to get removed because the neighboring person that owns the land has a fence within that parcel and closing off sections of that land. So we're kind of here to ask questions about why the difference in price and if $18,000 is worth 0.35 of an acre.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. And so the value of land is determined through assessment, and I believe our assessor was Kevin. Did you want to come up to the microphone and perhaps explain how this could be the value that it is at?
Okay, first of all, we take sales of properties, and so there's always a range of sales when you look at different sizes, different shapes, that type of thing. So when I looked at this property, I noted that Mr. Hayworth purchased the current property where the mobile home is sitting for $60,000 back in 2015. My legislation says that I need to use sales up to 3 years prior. So because Cassils, you don't get a sale there every day. It's extremely rare to find a sale. I was really quite excited to have a sale there. So what it is, I took their sale, compared what I had on other sales, and I did what's called a abstract value, which means I took the value of the mobile home, took it off of the total value of the sale, and said what's remaining. So the remaining value for the land was $32,800. The manufactured home that's there, we valued at $25,800. So that parcel that is right beside the parcel that we're talking about today is valued at $32,800 for a 0.34 of an acre parcel. So when I looked at the parcel that's the road allowance there that come out to 0.35 of an acre, I looked at the size of it and the shape of it, and I said, well, that looks like a upside down goalie stick. So pretty hard to develop on the little skinny side of it. So what I did is I gave a reduction based on the shape of that parcel. And so my reduction came up to about 45% reduction, which come out to $18,450. I noticed that we do have an appraisal. The appraisal for that parcel based on March, or actually as of today, I guess it's based on 2014. I didn't realize that, but anyway, the appraisal showed a range of $37,000 to $58,000 per acre. The appraiser said that's within a hamlet. The value that we came up with is $52,700 per acre. I do realize that we are talking about today's values, but from the assessment side, I can only use sales up to July of last year. Again, with Mr. Hayworth paying $60,000 for that property, it's pretty fair to say that $18,450 for the parcel next door would be fair. I'm not sure where Ms. Pittman is getting her realtors saying that the total cost is $1,900. I'm really not sure where that would come from, especially if you look at the appraisal and the sales that I use to come up with my value. I guess that's it. If there's any questions.
Questions? Brian, Tracy, Clarence?
Kevin, when you're doing that, I mean, I understand your price on that parcel, and then taking the mobile home figure off. Does your assessment, once you've done that, take into account the servicing that's on there already? Because there's services, even if you remove the mobile home, whether it's septic or a cistern or power and gas, that are they taking that into consideration, and should that be reflected on this parcel too?
Yes, in Hamlet's in particular, we always include servicing. And so you're right, if you remove the mobile home, the value is still there in the servicing. Servicing can range depending on where you are in the county. If you're close to Brooks like this is, you're looking at that $40,000 range to hook up power, septic, and natural gas. So we take that into consideration.
And so this parcel that we're referring to, is it serviced?
That I don't know. Since it's a road allowance, I don't believe it would have the servicing.
So then just to follow up on that, wouldn't you then do another reduction in the assessed value because there is no servicing on that area because it's just bare property?
Well, when we do look at vacant sales, those are unserviced, so the value that I have is for the road allowance would be the unserviced value anyway. Actually, no, you are right. Yes, there should be an extra reduction for no servicing on that parcel.
What value did you put on the mobile home?
The value of the mobile home is $25,800.
So servicing is another 40. So shouldn't you take 65 off, and then we got 0? Is that? I'm just wondering.
Pardon me.
Right.
But the one sale we used just the abstract for the Hamlet. The sales that I received were for acreage parcels that were ranging from 1 to 3 acres. So again, it was pretty hard to value this for a 0.35. Yeah. So I use the abstract model to get the value for Cassils.
So then, Kevin, if there needs to be a further adjustment, how long would it take you to figure that out?
Probably 15 minutes. I just referring back to the appraisal also. The appraisal came at $37,000 to $58,000 for a parcel of land in the Hamlet.
Service.
So I'm right in the range. Well, I don't know if it's serviced or not. I didn't have time to actually go through the whole appraisal.
So obviously to get a more fair, perhaps, price, then we need to give you some time.
If I could have 15 minutes, that would work.
Yep. Okay. I think that would work. Kevin?
So, Madam Reeve, just a couple things. If council decides they want to take an offer that's below market value, perceived market value, we'll have to go through the MGA, do the advertisement, open the parcel up, allow it to be tendered, and then you can, as long as you state in the ad that you're prepared to sell it under market value, you can do that. I would recommend that you not do anything outside of that if it's going to be a value that our assessor's not comfortable with.
Yeah. But Kevin, you would bring us an amount that you would be comfortable with if this is an unserviced versus serviced, right? Yes. Alice?
So I did some research on the whole market value idea through the MGA. Again, Section 70, disposal of land by municipality. If a municipality proposes to transfer an interest in land for less than market value, the proposal must be advertised. So that's what Kevin is getting at. Definition of market value, we've looked at before. So I sent an email to Municipal Affairs and said, can a municipality set a policy about market value when selling municipal land? So can the municipality say, this is the market value that we want to set, without the idea of having to advertise if it's different, say, than what the assessor might say? And the short answer to that was yes, that we can set policy to say, when we're selling municipal land, this is going to be the market value of it. So from that then, long term, if council wants to set a policy, we have a policy for road closure and lease or sale, we could add to that policy that this is what we consider market value. We can base it on different factors that I've looked at. There's the EID who has values assigned for lands that they sell or purchase, and that's what Municipal Services uses when they do road allowance widenings. We can also set it on that appraisal, which I had requested in 2014 because I was also asked about market value.
So that gives ranges based on location of the road allowance. Or we could set it then similar to the municipal reserve dedication, which is based on how close the land is to an urban area. So, I mean, one of my suggestions is that if council wishes, I could come back with amendments to policy with options to show, you know, this might be a more realistic way to assign market value. In the short term, we can, the two options are basically, you know, what Kevin might come up with this adjustment here, or the original, or again then what Kevin Stevenson is saying to advertise. So, I mean, just some things to consider in here with this.
Right. We'll go to Kelly, back to Clarence.
So what I'm struggling with is the difference between 1,500 and 15,000. Like, we're miles apart. So were the applicants originally told by staff $1,500, Alice?
I think what happened is that the applicants misunderstood what I was telling them. The 1,500 is survey costs. Usually it's 1,500 to 2,000 to 3,000-ish survey costs, which includes a consolidation, survey of the land, and registration at land titles. Market value is always over and above that. And so I have contacted the applicant and apologized for that misunderstanding. But that's what I would have been referring to.
Jennifer?
In regards to that 15,000, it was very clear that it was 15,000 or 1,500. Sorry, I do apologize for that mistake. And I did ask Alice why the difference, because yes, it was quite a shock to our system as well when we found out. And she did not reply, and I do have all the emails back and forth asking for her to answer these questions, and then therefore I asked to speak to you guys directly. And also the MLS listing that I quoted off of the 1,936 is SC013000, 4 zeros at the end.
And I'm curious, what does that mean?
He just asked what listing I got my fair value market assessment on, so I'm just letting you guys know which one it was, and it was pulled out yesterday afternoon.
Kevin, you wouldn't be able to use that anyhow because it's all back to July a year ago, right? The way it's calculated.
That's what we have to use, yes. What size of parcel is that referring to on the MLS?
The size of parcel is 177 acres with 130 acres of EID water rights for $1.7 million.
Okay, that listing is for a farm parcel. We are dealing with an urban hamlet parcel, which is totally different. You're not going to have, you know, we're dealing with an apple and orange here.
Yes. I think I understand that. All right, is there anything else? Clarence, sorry.
Just a question, just remind me, Kevin, when we put a piece of land up for sale and ask for bids, are the bids that we get then considered market value, or if we get a very low bid on something that we all think it should be much higher, is it market value, or is it just time of year or whatever? Where's that at, like legally?
So from a legal perspective, municipal affairs, you know, they can provide advice on the MGA, but they have to go back and go through the definition of market values. They have to go back through legal representation. The whole idea behind the MGA and not selling land for less than market value is to make sure that one ratepayer doesn't get the benefit from all the rest of the ratepayers in the county that essentially own that parcel. So it's a fairness exercise, and we deal with this all the time where there's a huge difference between what's perceived and what isn't. So my advice is that if you're going to sell it for anything other than what our professionals are advising, that we do go through the advertisement and that you do state in the ad that you're prepared to sell it for under market value, so that it does not come into question in terms of whether you get one or two to bids to determine whether that's market value, because we do know from an auction out at the lake this year that some land went for pretty cheap. And I think that if you take any assessors around, you're going to find that that isn't true market value. Market value of the day, market value of the time, but it's a tricky thing that we represent when we're dealing with issues, all the ratepayers, so we have to represent their interests, and that's all I would caution, is that we do take the cautious route. If you're planning to consider that or do it, tender it, open it up to everybody, state in the ad that you're going to prepare to sell it under market value, because it isn't a piece of land that you plan to use, and go from there. That would be my recommendation.
And so for us to determine that, to go that far, we need to get a better number or a different number by giving Kevin some time to work on that, correct? So I'm saying then that we should wait until we get that number. Jennifer, sound reasonable?
Yep, we agreed to that too.
Yeah. Lionel?
I'm struggling a little bit with the value of the services on that property. So today, private sewer systems are just about onerous enough that you can't develop some properties almost. And so my experience with the last one we put in cost half as much as the value of this property. So how do you value that? And how do you qualify what condition that service is today? And is it reasonable to expect that they can continue using it?
Basically, I should clarify one thing. And when I say servicing, I'm referring to actually acreage properties or farm properties. The urbans, we don't actually put a servicing value on them, because in the hamlets, your services are right at the road, so all you do is you tie in. Normally, urbans already have your sewers and everything hooked up, except in this situation with the hamlet. I think everybody's responsible for their own servicing in the hamlet. So what we did is we grouped all hamlets together. We didn't put a servicing value on. We said if a lot sells in Patricia for $7,000, we're saying that's the value of the property, and that's what we're going to put on as the assessed value. Because again, like say the services, say for Patricia, I believe are already to the property line. It's just a matter of tying in. So the $40,000 that we were saying cost to put services in would refer to an acreage parcel or a farm parcel, not an urban hamlet parcel. What I'm leaning toward is I don't see much more of a reduction in what I already have stated. Lionel was talking about like over time, what is the value of those services? We put that value in the original, when an acreage is developed. So when the parcel actually gets a house put on it, that's where we'll add in the servicing. We won't put that in there until it's actually developed. So if someone buys 3 acres for $100,000, we know that that parcel is not developed yet, or sorry, the services aren't there yet. So then that extra cost will come about when they actually put a home on the property. That stays with, the value does not change over years. It'll stay with it until we get extra costs or different costs, say from contractors. You know, if that $40,000 isn't reasonable, now it's gotten cheaper, then we will adjust it. We do look at the servicing every year, but it doesn't change that much. Like I say, until until we get new costs presented to us, that'll stay for basically the life of the property.
It's not a matter of services that are crumbling or versus brand new services then. For example, septic type stuff. Yeah, okay. Tracy, Clarence?
Okay, you got me really confused now. So, first you said that you took into consideration services and that you included that with your assessed value of market value, but now you're saying that there is no such thing.
Okay,
I'm confused.
Yeah, I'm just clarifying. When the question was first asked, in my mind I was thinking acreages, not necessarily hamlets. So in the hamlets or urban centers, there's no extra value attached to the parcel. So in other words, we don't add $40,000 to a parcel at Lake Newell because the service is already there in your roadways and that type of thing. So it's just a matter of tying in, 50 feet or whatever. So we don't add for that part of it. I was referring to acreages, not hamlets or urban centers.
But in this area, is there those kind of services? Like they have to put in their own septic and their own water. So
but it is,
how can you classify it as the same as like Lake Newell Resort, where yes, their services are there? Like I don't understand.
It's just a standard that we use for. We say, okay, all hamlets are based on this, and that's what we've been using in the history of assessment. That's what we've been using is for hamlets. We don't actually add extra money for the servicing once it's developed.
And that's a provincial thing.
That's correct.
I get so many people want to talk, I don't know where to go. I'll go in order. Clarence, Ellen, Diane, Kevin.
Well, first of all, I think I want to reiterate what Kevin is saying. We got to be fair to all the people in the county. We also have to be fair to the person who's applying. And to me, it seems that when we're trying to put a value to this, there's some holes in it, the way you're doing it, Kevin, and you're just going by what has to happen, because when the applicants bought that place, they certainly put value on the services. So that has to be in there somewhere if we're trying to establish what land is worth. So to me, there's an error there, and I can see us if we want to really want to be fair, we just put it up for auction and see where we're at. If the applicants want to buy it, that's theirs. If somebody else thinks it's more valuable, that's theirs. But there are holes in to the market value that we've been establishing here, I think.
If I could just comment to that, getting back to the actual sale of the property, what the Haywards bought it for. If you take the value of the mobile home out of there, what is the remaining land value? So to them, the value of that lot that they paid, where's my sheet, is $32,800. So I guess in my mind, why are we wanting to sell a parcel that's a little bit bigger for anywhere less than that, if that's the value that a willing buyer bought it for, regardless if somewhere where the servicing is not in the picture here.
Ellen, Diane.
Just to clarify, so this hamlet, they cannot tie into the septic. There is no septic, there isn't. What did the applicant use before? And is that still available? Like, was it a septic field or was it a tank?
It is currently a septic a septic field that we use, and we haven't changed that since we bought the property, so I'm unsure what happened before that.
Diane. Kevin.
I guess I'm going to take it from a development point of view, which is, again, not an assessment point of view. And I think that we're kind of talking around that. And again, I think if you took a mobile home off, there is value in the septic field and the cistern that is already there. So whether or not that was a $20,000 investment or a $30,000 investment, that does to me count into whether or not, because that land now is serviced. Whether or not you move the house or not, you can still move a new house on, tie into those services. You don't have to redo that. If you were going to be doing that on this other lot, separate of this one, that investment would have to be put in. So the additional $30,000. So I would say from a market value point of view or from a purchasing point of view, you're going to look at that and say, I got to buy a $30,000 home to put on it and put $30,000 into it to service it. That's going to change what I'm willing to pay for that vacant piece of land. The other thing that really strikes me in this one, and it reminds me very much of our discussion we had with the Municipal Reserve, where we had values all over the place. And these are interesting things because to me, road allowances are a very difficult, undevelopable piece of land on its own. If you buy an alley, you can't really do anything unless you put it to an adjacent parcel. If you buy a statutory road allowance, I know in certain states, we always have them added into the agricultural parcel. They're not standalone parcels because of the length and size and ability of development on them are pretty negligible unless you add it to another piece of land. So again, I don't know how that fits into the assessment part of it, but I mean, to me, these are different than if you had a full tax recovery lot in a hamlet that you were going to sell. Then these are these weird pieces of historic alleys and roadways that really have no value from a development point of view unless you can, again, add it to an adjacent lot to ensure that we can increase the value of that other lot. So again, I from a development perspective, I do disagree. I think the servicing does have to come into account with this particular situation. It isn't an acreage. It isn't a fully serviced hamlet. It's something in between, and this again is a really unusual historic lot. We would never create a 0.3 acre lot on individual services now. So again, to me, to open it up to market and have someone else have the same issue, I'm not even sure that, you know, to me, having the extra land for septic failure, those types of things would be a benefit. So yeah, I don't know how you move forward with this, but I definitely think that the value has to take the servicing into account and the developability of it.
Kevin.
So, Madam Reeve, just one other thing, and Diane's correct. I mean, this is an oblong shape, and there's no doubt it needs a reduction. The question is, what's a fair reduction, whether 45 or 50% is fair? I don't know. I mean, that's what Kevin and the appraisers look at. But we see it time after time where somebody takes 10 feet from their neighbor, they consolidate their lot, and I can guarantee you that they get the same dollar value unless it goes to a huge size where it changes and there's a scale. But they get the same dollar value based on the acreage for that 10 feet that they do for the 40 feet that they already have. That's at 100% value. There's a reduction here, and that's obviously what's in question. So again, I'm going to stand by my recommendation is that we don't get into opinions on market value, that we take the safe road.
And so it takes me back to where we sort of started or left off 15 minutes ago, that we need to give Kevin some time to come back with a number. And if we want to do that today, we have a public hearing that really doesn't change the value whether we're going to sell that or not. I mean, that's what we're here for, to get feedback on that. But we need to accomplish the public hearing today, correct, Kevin? We still can do that. And so I would suggest that we let Kevin do some work on this, and perhaps he can come back once we get through the public hearing, well, or even after lunch it might have to be, to let us know what the figure is, and then the determination would have to come from our group as to whether we feel comfortable or not with the number and whether we would need to advertise or sell. Make sense? Okay, Kevin, does that sound reasonable? All these suggestions I know are wonderful, but I do also understand that assessment is provincially regulated, which drives me crazy, but anyhow, just you can't have everything you want. So, Jennifer.
Just something I was really confused about when Kevin
Yeah, two
was
Kevins here.
yeah, that's what I was confused about. When Kevin was talking, he was talking that when you're classified in a hamlet, you know, the services are included, right? Was I incorrect there, or you can add? And then he went about, you know, and they're classifying this as a hamlet,
yeah,
not an acreage.
Yeah.
So then he was basing his, like, I was really confused when he was talking about that, if he was assessing it per an acreage with services, or if he was doing it with a hamlet with services tied in. So I don't know if he can clarify that.
You bet. Kevin?
Yes, it's classified as a hamlet, so I've assessed it as a hamlet, and including the services that are already there.
Okay. All right. I'm going to then decide that we're going to move on and move into public hearing. Otherwise, we won't get that accomplished. We're sort of backing things up here. Alice, you have...
Just a quick question. Are we reconvening at 1 or later this morning? Just so that Jennifer knows.
For the public hearing?
No, for this application, so that Jennifer knows if she needs to come back or if she's going to stay.
Well, I look at our agenda. We have an 11:45 delegation, a 1 o'clock, and a 1:15. So even if Kevin Halstead was available or had it ready for 1 o'clock, we have lots of other things happening. And so I don't think it will probably be until later this afternoon that Kevin would come up with a figure. And at which time we would have to decide as a group, I guess, if we're going to accept that or have to advertise it. Correct, Council? That's where we would be at. Yes, and a 1:15 as well. So perhaps we could let Jennifer know when we're... Yes, I think that would be the safest. We're just sort of running into things, but do want to get this public hearing done, so because it's been advertised for the time, and there's sort of some regulations around those too. So could I get a motion for us to move into public hearing? Moved by Tracy Fife. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And we are at item in our agenda, item 7. No? So Alice is...
I've got my wrong glasses here. Like, holy cow, I need 5 pair of glasses.
Our first one, Bylaw 1916-18, road closure and lease, in the Hamlet of Tilly.
This mouse is being weird. All right, I'm going to try to work with this mouse, and it's not cooperating. So this public hearing is for the closure and lease of a road allowance in the Hamlet of Tilly. The purpose is to set up a long-term lease agreement between the county and the Newell Regional Services Waste Management Association, NRSWMA. So in the process, there were no objections submitted from any of the required referral agencies. We did get a phone call yesterday from a woman living in Tilly, concerned about access to her property from the rear of her parcel, and I believe it was this parcel, if you can see where my arrow is. And I know that Lane talked to her this morning, and I don't see her here, so I'm assuming that that has been resolved.
Yes, I did speak with her. I sent her an aerial photo showing the exact portion of the road allowance that is up for closure. I sent it to her husband as well. I spoke to both of them, clarified exactly what area, and the fact that they're not here would indicate that they don't have a concern.
Are there any further questions from councillors? Seeing none, then we need a motion to move out. Hubie moves us out. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moves us to the bylaw for first reading. Kelly will move that. Questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
There is also, sorry to interrupt, 8.2 Bylaw 1914-18, which is second and third reading for road closure and lease.
Right. So move on to...
We've already dealt with those.
Did you? Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Pardon me? Oh, yes, right. We did that. So that's it for this one. This is just the first reading for the after the public hearing today. Yes. All right. I think we've caught up, more or less. All right, we'll move to Cole then. Our 11:45 delegation. Join us at the table, please.
Thank you, Reeve Douglas and councillors. I missed you last month. I was away, so it's been a couple months since I've seen you last. And thankfully, we don't have a whole lot to report. Everything seems to be running really, really well, so I'll kind of quickly go through what I do have and take some questions. So, the Hamlet distribution systems, we're seeing normal operations, and there's nothing new to report in them. Our wastewater systems, we did have to deal with an issue in Scandia, the sewer system. Someone had illegally accessed the sewer system via a manhole and dumped a bunch of empty plastic containers down there. They turned up in the lift station, caused some pumping problems, and we had to get a hydrovac to clean them out. And no damage to any of the equipment, other than a little bit of an issue throwing up an alarm, but we had no adverse effects because of it, other than the fact that we had to get someone out, spend a little bit of money to rectify the situation. Echo Chandler, we contacted her. She does a newsletter in that community, and she's going to put in there that people aren't allowed to access the sewer system in that way or dispose of anything down the sewer system that's not appropriate. So that's about all we can do for now. If it continues, we might have to look into other options, but in the last 5 years, that's the first time I've seen it, where the people have actually dumped stuff down there like that. So it was about 50 to 60 empty plastic containers. They're about a half a liter each. And they were floating around in there. So, like I said, no damage, so everything's back to normal. The rural water system, we are still dealing with malfunctioning flow valves, but nowhere near the numbers that we saw earlier in the spring. I believe I mentioned before we were dealing with about 30 of them a month earlier in the spring. We're down to, as you can see in my report, 6 over the last month plus. So they're down, and but our operators still bring up parts to anybody that needs them that's wanting it. So, and then we had one new hookup this past 60 days. So that's basically my report. Not a whole lot, but that's a good thing. So everything's running really well and no big issues to report.
Questions for Cole? Really?
Was the resident caught that dumped the stuff in the hole?
No, this was after the fact, so we couldn't really tell who did it, but
Obviously someone who thinks there should be plastic recycling made available.
apparently, yes.
I'm surprised there haven't been a few more hookups in the warm weather of summer.
Yeah, that's surprising. I think we're kind of seeing basically everybody that wants it has it, and
the rest are just going to
they'll trickle in.
Pay that idle site forever, or idle fee?
I don't know what your numbers are like as far as that, if that's a big number, but yeah, I'm aware that that's there, so I don't know why they're reluctant to hook up if they're still paying for an idle charge, but
Their well's okay still or something. So, Brian.
With the hot weather, any new records? You were close on our NRSC meeting. You said you were within 60 cubes of setting a record. So I was curious this week with maybe tomorrow will be your magic day.
Yeah.
I'm thinking if we are going to do it, it will be tomorrow probably. Yeah, we were 64 cubic meters shy of our all-time record on July 17th, I believe was the day. So yeah, we were a little over 21,000 cubic meters produced in a 24-hour period. So that's making a lot of water. So
just maybe for council's benefit and our benefit, my benefit too. What is our capacity and what's that margin that you have between what your peak is and what that capacity is of the plant?
So that number can be a little bit deceiving because it is just a peak 24 hours. So it's not like that's a taxing number long term on the system. But we still are well within our peak. We can handle 32,000. So we're roughly 2/3 of that. And we've only reached it twice in the last 5 years. So we're averaging about in the summer months and even in a hot summer like this one that we've had, about 17,000. So we're less than half capacity on most days in the summertime, and then obviously in the wintertime it's not even an issue whatsoever. We're less than that. We're probably about 7,000 cubes in the wintertime. So, but when you do have events of 40 degrees and it lasts for a day or two, people like their nice green lawns in the bigger communities like Brooks, and some of the hamlets. So we definitely make the water for those type of consumers.
And when you have like the announcement this week about the marijuana facility that is proposed, and again, don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves till we actually see a shovel in the ground, but I'm assuming that would all be impact the plant too, because of the consumption of water for the use. Do they ever come with a projection as far as what their water needs would be for a facility like that, or do you have any sort of information as far as that goes?
If you're referring to the one in the city of Brooks that they've greenlit, we did take them through our facility. They were more concerned about the quality of water that we can produce. Not so much the volume. The numbers that they gave me were actually pretty small and insignificant. They wouldn't make any difference to it. It's not a really huge water intensive operation. So as far as right now, it's not even an issue. But like I said, they were really concerned on what quality we can produce, and we all know that it's about as good as it gets. It's excellent. So they were happy with the numbers that we publish. We have quite an extensive analysis program in that biannually, twice a year, we get the full gamut of water quality testing done, and we publish those on our website. So their chemists and their botanists or whatever that are concerned with that who had all the information available to them, and they obviously felt that it was more than adequate, so they're going ahead.
Interesting that, so there's water and then there's water.
For sure.
All potable.
Yes, because I believe they're doing some research as well, and so they need it to be a certain quality, and I'm not exactly sure what their criteria were, but they were happy with what we produced. So, and then that's not to say that they can't go above and beyond and do whatever they need to after the fact.
I still do lots of residents.
Yes, for sure. If they wanted to, say, remove some of the salts or minerals and stuff like that, they can go with an RO system on their own at their facility. So that's up to them, but they know what they're getting from us, and they're happy with that.
In a rural house recently where the male did the Brita system after, took the water, put it in the fridge, and his wife could still taste something, and so she had her own system on the counter. I thought, wow, people are crazy. Kelly.
I just wanted to throw out a bouquet to staff. I had a near living in town experience where we came home and we were out of water. And so my experience is, well, we have town water. We'll just phone the water provider. That's where the problem is. So I phoned the office, and the gal on the phone was really kind. She asked me a series of questions, and I felt like this big, but turned out we had 2 toilets that drained our tanks while we were gone, and very simple fix, of course. But it was cool to have that near town living experience where it becomes somebody else's problem when it really wasn't. But she was very kind, and I immediately phoned back and said, no, cancel the service, man. They were going to send somebody out right away. Yeah. So thanks, Cole. Pass that along, please.
I will, for sure. And that's what we strive to do. So if anybody does phone in and they're having issues, we're more than happy to go out there and take a look at it with them. Even if, like you say, if it's our problem or theirs or whoever's, we're there to give assistance so that we're not just leaving people there wondering or having to deal with it on their own. So we're quality-driven, customer service-driven.
Anything else for Cole? All right. Well, thank you, Cole, for coming. And as always, join us for lunch if you can. And are you able to join us later? Are we still doing our get-together after council? Kevin? Lane? Yeah.
Yes, Yvonne messaged me that this morning, so I'm not sure if I'll make that, but I'll join for lunch for sure.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
One or the others, all good. Okay. Is lunch here? Okay. We'll recess till, how about we get together here at 1:45, and just so we can have a conflab if necessary. Thank you. Seeing as everyone is here, and our 1 o'clock delegation is not. We'll just pop down to item 11.3, the 28 tax sale and public auction.
This is an annual process, and what we have done in the past is council has just set the date, the terms, and you've got the information that's in the report as to which properties are coming up. So we just asked council to confirm that the tax sale would be on November 7th and that the terms are cash. That's what we're requiring at this point.
Who would care to make that motion? Hubie moves that. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. We'll just keep going. Item 11.4 is setting a date for the review of the draft budget.
So I guess just wanting council to check their schedules and let us know if they can accommodate the dates that have been suggested during the week of November 2nd.
November 2nd?
Yeah.
I'm going to suggest November 1st.
How can you say the week of November 2nd and suggest November 1st?
No, it's before November 2nd.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Week ending November 2nd.
Gotcha. Friday is November 2nd. During the week ending. Sorry. So I guess, eh? Oh dear. Okay, this would be the week beginning October 29th. Excuse me, Councillor Amulin. I have been corrected. October 29th, 30th, 31st, and Clarence is suggesting the 1st of November, All Saints' Day. It's only fitting, Clarence. Does anyone have any opposition to that? Thursday the 1st? I can tell by the round of applause or laughter that who cares? Okay, and we want it to start at 8:30. That was the idea suggested by Matt? So November the 1st, Thursday, 8:30 a.m. You'd be away most of that week then. Is that at the end of the week or the... Okay. It's closer, so right? Mr. Davies was attending, was he not? That was the concept. Okay. Just want to call. Ariana?
I forgot how to use the microphone. Yeah, as far as I know, he was going to show up at 1. They confirmed yesterday again. So.
Okay. Well, he might be at the old county building or something. Who knows? So we will carry on. Checks for payment, item 11.5. We need a motion to pay these checks that total to over $2 million. Usually to do with roads, and these are. Who would like to move that? Kelly moves. Questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And then there is the payment register, the direct debit register, as well as tax overpayment refunds, all under item 11.6. Are there any questions? I think Mr. Davies has arrived. Any questions? Lionel? No? Okay. Any questions on any of that stuff? Motion to accept the payment register made by Lionel. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Are there any requests for function of, oh, there is one request for function of council for sure. And that was the 2018 Wheatland County AFB tour. And I was hoping to go on that. I don't know if anybody else was. Okay, so there are a number of people that have signed up. Let Ariana know. Is that okay? So then we need it for a function of council. Brian?
I'll make that motion for function of council for those who want to attend.
Okay, and register through Ariana. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. All right, we will stop there and go backwards to item 11.1 on our agenda. And invite our guests. Mr. Davies, if you'd like to move up to these chairs here. We'll do some introductions around our table and welcome. We just can't wait to get to our agenda. So as soon as lunch was over, we did some catch-up other stuff before your items. So we'll get back on track here now. Welcome. I'm Molly Douglas, and I represent the northern part of the County of Newell, the Gem Finnegan area. And I'm the Reeve, so that's why I get to chair this meeting. And we're going to do some intros of our people around the table and our other people in the audience. And then we'll let you introduce yourselves and take it from there. Lane.
Hi there, I'm Lane Johnson, Director of Corporate Services.
Hello, Ariana Nielsen, Executive Assistant.
Hello, I'm Ellen Undra, and I represent the countryside around the village of Rosemary.
Good afternoon, Hubie Callan, Division 2, Tilly.
Hi, I'm Kelly Chrisman from the Pisano area, Division 6.
Hi, welcome. I'm Kevin Stevenson, County Administrator.
Clarence Amulin, I represent Rolling Hills.
We have a couple of councillors absent today, actually, on a weed tour. Not the new weed, the old weeds. The old weeds. Tracy.
Hi, I'm Tracy Fife, Division 5, which is South and West John Brooks.
Brian DeJong, I'm the councillor that represents the area around the village of Dutchess.
Lionel Justin, I am from Division 10, which is north and east of Brooks.
Orville's on the agenda after you, gentlemen. So, anyhow, yes, we have some information in our package. And Lane, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to what the information is, or
It's just to introduce the agenda item. Of course, we go through the process of issuing tax notices, and there's a deadline for payment of property taxes on an annual basis. Of course, June 15th is the date that the county has had in place for a number of years. And this particular year, we have had a situation that's come to our attention, and the company in question is wanting council to consider the request that they have submitted and is before council in the agenda package today.
all right. And so, gentlemen, I'll let you introduce yourselves. And
I'm Colin Davies. I'm the CEO of Core 4 Oil Corp. Joining me today is Adam Powell, who's our production superintendent for our operations in the Brooks area. And maybe by way of brief introduction, our company used to be called Imaginia Energy Corp. And in late 2017, we had a change of management within Imaginia associated with a change of name. A number of us joined Imaginia as a new management team. We are working with largely the previous team in the Brooks and Medicine Hat area. We're about 6 or 7 months in, and the operations that our company has are entirely focused in this part of the world. And Imaginia had assembled a sizable number of assets within county of Newell, as well as a couple of other surrounding counties. I think had a really good start on trying to revitalize and optimize the operations that had been acquired from larger companies and had been in place and operated for a number of years. And we feel like we inherited a great team out in the field. We really are proud that Imaginia had been a good member of the community, and a lot of our employees are members of the community. And our culture is to try and be a good corporate citizen as well as an efficient company in a business sense. And we're technically focused and operationally focused, and are privileged to be able to lead this company and try to continue the work that was started by the previous management team of Imagineer. We have some very supportive shareholders. They're private. We're a privately funded company, and our shareholders are based in the U.S., but they've been invested in the company from the very beginning. Very supportive of us, willing to provide more funding to us to continue with the development of the assets that we have and the improvement of the assets that we have. And I think that even in this tight commodity price environment, I'm really happy with the company that we have and the potential that our company has to continue to be a good community member and a strong business within the community that we operate in. The situation that brings us in front of council, and I really appreciate the chance to come to meet council. I mean, in the bigger picture, it's nice just to get to meet people within the communities that we operate in. I'm based in Calgary. Adam's our lead guy in Brooks, and I make it out here as much as I can, but not all that often. So it was just a good excuse almost to come in front of our county to chat. The specific piece of business that brings us here is that we did miss the deadline for our property taxes for 2018. It was an honest mistake in our Calgary office. It just the tax assessment and the deadline associated with it was missed by our team, and as a result, we have been assessed the 3% penalty, and recognize that penalty was stated clearly on the bill. Recognize that it was entirely our error, and have tightened up our processes to make sure that deadlines are heeded and paid attention to going forward for this and for any other payments that we have. But I think it's worth noting that we did pay, I think, a few days late and paid in full, and the submission that was sent in by our CFO, who couldn't be with me today, just requested consideration for a waiver of the fee or of the penalty, given the promptness that we paid and the circumstances that it was a very unintentional omission on our part, resulting in the situation that we're in. As far as the kind of in support of our suggestion, anything that our company makes in turn after our operating costs and after our royalties in any given period is reinvested in all of our assets and into the community. We don't take money out of the company. Our shareholders don't take money out of the company at all. So we really are in this current environment watching every penny that we make, and we're proud to be able to reinvest and develop the assets that we have. And so So the suggestion that we may get some relief on this fee would result in us having more funds available to invest in our assets in the community. And we do try to watch every penny, as I know the county and everyone else in the business that we're in and in the community that we're in has to as well.
Any questions for Mr. Davies or Adam? Adam, are you a local guy? Did you grow up here?
Born and raised.
John and Irene's boy.
That's right. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Mainly good. Mainly good. Brian.
My question is to our administration. What is the date that the tax notices are sent out?
It's typically the end of April, early May is when they go out. And that's the time frame that we have consistently been sending them out for a number of years.
These are awful cases. Clarence.
Well, Adam, I thought it was the same fellow that I knew as a little guy. Of course, your dad and I played basketball UFC together, so. But anyway, these are tough. And, gentlemen, unless we change from our previous practice, you're probably not going to go away happy. We get requests like this quite often. And there's always an excuse. And like you said, Mr. Davies, you've tightened up your processes. And I guess that's encouraging. But if we bend for one, we have to bend for all. And then we get caught in an awful situation where we have to judge whether your excuses are legitimate or not. I guess many years ago I was in the same boat you were. It's not, the dollars weren't anywhere close to that, but I remembered over the weekend that taxes had to be paid the day before. Rushed in Monday morning. The gals at the office, and this was probably 20, 30 years ago. I can't even remember the amounts or what, but I said, well, I came right away. She says, I'm sorry, it's percentage. I don't know if it was 3% that time or not. Can't remember the numbers. And I left disappointed, ticked off at the county a little bit, but understood where they were coming from. But more ticked off at myself for not following proper procedures. And as long as I've been on council, we've only been lenient to one case. That was where there was a fire and everything disappeared. But even then they had to pay school requisition because we have no choice in that either. And I really am not doing it flippantly, but I don't think we have much choice but to say that, this is just something that we have to stick by. It's a large amount of money, but I mean, it's like you say, it's all pretty clear, and it's processes that are coming from your company. Usually, it's smaller individuals that miss, but at our council table, we don't discriminate against race, rich or poor, black or white, whatever. And if you start doing that, you're in trouble, as you realize. So, Madam Chair, with that, I would like to make a motion that we have to refuse this request.
Any further comments? Ellen?
I see it differently. I think it looks to me like an honest mistake that was rectified within a week. I'd be in favor of waiving it.
Kelly.
Through the chair, I my previous employment was with a municipality, and so I've worked with this process for years. And I'll just share with you that the tax rate on due date in that municipality is 18% on the due date. Wavering is frowned upon per the MGA, and so I have to say that I have to take a hard line on this as well. I'm sorry, gentlemen.
Any other comments? All right. The motion was to refuse the request to waive tax penalties. All in favor of that motion? Opposed? The motion is carried. And as Clarence said, this is really difficult, but we do get requests like this. Not often, and I don't think. Well, we did allow one change for an elderly gentleman who'd had a fire. That's right, Clarence. And so we feel bad, but we have to stick to what we do because there's always somebody that has an excuse, and they're often good ones too. Changing the subject, so it's great to meet the people that have taken over from Imaginea, and I can't remember the lady's name who died, who owned it.
Suzanne West.
Suzanne, yes.
Yeah.
And she certainly made an impact in our community because when she first came here, I was on council then, and they had open houses and just did some interesting and different things.
Yeah,
So
I think I really admire her approach and her philosophy on the bigger picture as well.
Yeah.
And I think she had under our new management and under our new name, I think a lot of the good principles of good business, good operations, solid community involvement continue, and we're proud of that. We may not call it the same things as she might have, but we really respect what we've inherited from her, and we're trying to build upon that.
no, it's good. And Adam, from a local perspective, there's lots of the local people still involved in Core 4?
Yeah. I think pretty much our whole field team made the transition over to Core 4, and everything's been very positive, lots of support.
Good.
Our activity levels up. We're doing some looking at new drills and expanding, and things we already have, making them more efficient and re-stims, and so it's good for the people working here, and a lot of the service companies, local ones, it's getting busy again, so it's good for the area for sure.
Excellent. I sort of had wondered what happened because it's been a few months, or
Yeah, the process that culminated in the change of management ended in November of last year. Tragically, Suzanne passed away subsequent to that. I'm not sure if you're aware of that.
Yes.
Suzanne passed away in March. It was a very sudden,
very
sudden thing. So she continued with her Imaginea name and her brand in a new company, focused on technology and environmentally focused technologies and digital transformation and artificial intelligence and a number of really great visionary things that I think over time are applicable and will be applicable and will benefit our business, because we need to be efficient as an oil and gas business now more than ever. It's a competitive business, and these more conventional parts of the basin that we exist in here and that this county relies upon are under the challenge of not just commodity price decreases and challenges, but also competition from technology and other basins in the world, and competing for capital to be provided by outside companies, because we don't grow unless we invest money beyond our cash flow.
Right.
And so we need to be able to be a really strong competitive business in order to be able to attract that investment and keep the confidence of our shareholders. And we're doing it proudly and proud to be part of this community. It's a bit of a homecoming for me. I was a summer student in 1987, living in Brooks myself for Pan Canadian Petroleum. I
Really?
operated a battery down by just past Lake Newell, and know the area, and over my business career, I've worked in Southern Alberta a lot of the time. So, we're I think up to the task of trying to be competitive and position our company for the long run and battle through all the challenges that we have.
Good. Pan Canadians had a few name changes since Colin.
Yeah, it has. It has. But some things just kind of stay the same when I come back 30 years later. Some things are kind of similar.
Well, it's excellent to meet you, and come back and see us under happier.
No, we really weren't coming here, looking for any special treatment. I very well understand the need to be consistent and not set precedents. I may just wonder, maybe this is something that can be followed up with administration. I respect the ruling, but the penalty, the 3% penalty applies from missing the June deadline until I think the next ratchet of the penalty is in November. So if we had thought about it a bit closer, and recognized and accepted the finality of us having to, pay the 3% penalty, we might not have submitted our full tax payment until the deadline in November. But ahead of that deadline, and on the magnitude of the tax bill that we're talking about here, that would have allowed us to recoup, or would allow us to recoup some interest as well on those funds. I'm not sure once the check's been submitted, on June the 23rd or whatever it came in on and cashed, whether there's a mechanism for us to get it back until the deadline, until the penalty would go from 3% to 8%. I think is the window. We're in a business that deals in large scale investments, but we do watch every penny, and Adam and his guys are living the efficiency model that we have, and so our company focusing on thousands of dollars is just as important as the millions we focus on if we're going to drill a well or two in our fields. So I'm just would wonder and think out loud about whether we could have the have an adjustment related to the interest value of that money until the next penalty to go from 3% up to 5% would kick in November. It's a few months worth of interest of some value to offset the $28,000 we're talking about in our penalty.
I'm just curious, Lane?
Yeah, the penalties are set through bylaw, and they're very clearly stated. Quite often what companies will do is they will make an informed decision as to whether or not they're going to meet that 3% deadline. Some deliberately choose to hold off until the next deadline is applied in November just for cash flow purposes. Occasionally when people miss that deadline of June 15th, they make an educated decision. Do I make the payment shortly after, even though the penalty has been applied, knowing that the next was not going to be applied until November? And for the most part, people will say, the penalty's already been applied, therefore I will hold on to my funds until just before the next penalty goes on in November, and that's just the way some people look after their business affairs. As far as the option that council has, you can always choose to do something, but again, it's going to set precedent. If there is consideration, the penalties are set through bylaw, and you're going to be basically waiving a bylaw requirement if that's the direction that you choose to go.
All right. Well, that's good information to know. I guess we could have a further discussion on that on another day, but we are, we have another delegation that was here for 1:15, so I would venture to guess, council, that might be a short discussion. I don't know, but I just know that we've been very inflexible when it comes to varying things to do with the taxes, and I guess, that would have been something you could have done, but so what you're asking now is for consideration of a rebate, basically.
Yeah, an offset to the full penalty to reflect that we paid almost on the original deadline.
Right.
Understanding that that might be a precedent, or you might have received that request before, I'm not sure. But you know, just reflecting that the payment was made in full as it was intended to be done,
right.
You know, right up front.
Well, before our meeting ends today, let's have a quick visit about that, guys, and see if there's a desire to look at it for another time. It's nothing that we've ever done before, so but I think it could be too long to start it right at this moment. Yeah. So thank you for coming in. As I said, excellent to meet you.
Well, thank you all for your time. It was an honor to meet everyone, and you know, and hopefully, you know, we will meet again or stay in touch, and kind of, you know, we know we're a big business member of Newell, or of Newell County, and you know, respect and appreciate the relationship that we have.
And we do also. It's great to meet our taxpayers, always.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
It's nice seeing all of you.
Good to see another Powell around here, Adam. Where are your mom and dad? Medicine Hat?
They're in Medicine Hat.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
No problem. Orville, Mr. Schatz, if you could join us. So we'll now go to item 9.2 on the agenda. 9.2, North Headgate. And we have information in our package from Lane and Orville. And Lane, did you just want to lead off, please?
Okay. So Mr. Schatz is before council to elaborate on the proposal that had been discussed previously on the use of holding tanks throughout the development instead of the communal sanitary wastewater collection system that had originally been approved in the area redevelopment plan. In addition to this particular item, we've already had conversations with Mr. Schatz about other items that they would like to see changed in the area redevelopment plan. I think for the most part, those other items, we certainly are in a position to move ahead with and formalize discussions and look at bringing back some amendments to the area redevelopment plan that would accommodate those other requests. This one in particular, though, is something that we definitely require direction from council on as to whether or not council is comfortable in waiving the requirement for a communal system and instead going with individual holding tanks. As Mr. Schatz has indicated, most of the properties that are out there right now, the tanks would have to be upgraded. There are some septic fields that are being used. The intent is that those septic fields would also be abandoned. What Mr. Schatz has proposed is that the upgrade of those facilities would take place over basically a 2-year period and would be funded by the property owners through the sale proceeds of individual lots, and those funds would be allocated first and foremost towards the replacement of all of the tanks that require an upgrade in order to meet the new standard that has been set. So the information before council, I'm assuming Mr. Schatz will want to have some further discussion with council on this, but at the end of the discussion here today, what we're going to be looking for from council is direction as to which specific amendments you want us to proceed with in the area redevelopment plan.
Thanks, Lane. And Orville has provided us with a document. I'm sure you might want to highlight some things, Orville?
Well, thank you for having me back again. Hopefully it's the last time I have to be here for a while. I put Lane, after I think your last meeting, Lane had indicated that you wanted a direction as to how we could guarantee the removal of the septic fields and have holding tanks that comply with current building requirements, provincial building requirements. So I put together a proposal, and I had two main objectives. Number one, provide the county with the security that they needed to make sure this was going to happen. And number two, be fair to all the residents. Some will have holding tanks that do work and meet the current requirements. Some will not, and some will still be using septic fields and will need to be changed. And I know there's a few out there that don't have any sort of sewage disposal. They basically haul it in and haul it out right now. They're mainly just summer residents who come and go. So what I've put together is a proposal that anyone out there who feels they have a compliant septic tank or a holding tank or septic tank that can be converted will get a building inspector to provide a certificate stating that it does qualify. I know Permit Pro does this. There's other ones too. I'm not sure who the county uses for most of their inspections, but Permit Pro is the one I'm most familiar with. Then if they don't comply, basically they will be given 1 year to upgrade their tanks to make sure holding tank does comply, and most of them would have to come and get a development permit. Lane advised me that development permit fee includes the inspection. So when that's done, you would have an inspection report that would indicate it does comply with the provincial laws. So how do we guarantee all this is going to happen? Well, first of all, I've got the owners to agree that all the funds from any sales up to the $360,000 will go into my trust account and will be held there to assure compliance with the requirements that all this be done by end of 2020. The reason I picked that date is basically nothing much is going to happen until next summer, and we all know how long it takes some people to get organized. So I thought a year to year and a half was probably a reasonable time period to apply this, and that by the end of 2020, then you'd be assured that all the septic fields are closed off and that there's no more sewage getting anywhere near the water sources. In addition, when the sales go through, if they haven't supplied a certificate that they have a qualifying holding tank, we would require a $10,000 deposit. They would get that back as soon as the certificate is provided, issued showing that they have a qualified holding tank. And for some people, they wouldn't be able to pay for the tank besides that, so we'd set it up so that they could assign that money to whatever plumber or whoever they had installed the holding tanks. There will be a number of residents that will wish to continue renting, and although it's not in here, I think what we'd be doing for those is setting the rental rates so that over several years they would pay off the cost of installing the holding tank, and the owners would end up putting those holding tanks in. So basically, rather than me going through it in much more detail, you probably have questions on it, and it's probably easier if you just ask me what your questions are. I think this process will assure the county that, in fact, they will comply with it.
Questions? Did I hear you say that there will be rental people also? This isn't.
I'm guessing some of the people won't be able to buy the lots right away. So I would think there will still be some people that will continue to rent. I mean, that's something, the owners want to work with the people out there so as many as possible can remain. But,
Yeah.
but the rental would be on individual lots.
So item 4 in the first set of information, Orville, you had that if any resident hasn't installed a holding tank by 2020, owners will then pay. Like, how will you guarantee that can happen?
That goes down to the second part, the guarantee of compliance. We'll certainly sell enough lots to have the money in trust to cover the cost of those. And that can be built into the development agreement. It's far better than a letter of credit and all of the other ways we usually make developers pay for the development so that they don't have the money up front.
Brian?
Well, and you, as opposed to your last comment, most developers go to the bank; they don't go to the county. But I guess my problem with what I like most of what you have laid out here. The problem that I'm having is the timelines. I don't understand why we can't have inspections done in a shorter period of time so that ultimately construction can begin next summer or early next summer. You have here construction for the 2020 season, and in my mind, I can't understand why inspections can't occur over the next 3 to 6 months, and at least then by first part of 2019. Some of these, basically that's when the installations are going to happen, and at least by the end of next year, we're a year ahead of schedule. So maybe help me understand why the timelines you've outlined here would not take that or are more appropriate than what I'm suggesting.
Well, it's my understanding the plan will not probably be registered until after January 1st. 2019. The road construction probably will not start till May, June of next year. That's going to hold up the installation of a lot of the septic tanks because you're going to have to get some further big equipment in there to dig the holes, etc. A lot of those will start next summer. I don't think there's any doubt about it. We're just putting in the July 1st, 2020 deadline, so any of the people who haven't installed them, then the developer has to go in or the owner has to go in and install them. I don't want to be too tough on the individual people because if we just go and do it, they're stuck with whatever cost we negotiate with. Some of them are going to be able to negotiate a better cost with their plumbers. I want to leave as much flexibility in there as possible for the actual residents, because many of them are. Some of them are just summer residents. They will not need the same holding tank that a full-time resident needs out there. So if they're allowed the time to do this, I think you'll find that you still end up with what you want. And I don't think one more year of effluent is going to make that much difference to the water source. But by the end of 2020, then the guarantee here is that all those septic fields will be closed off and holding tanks in place.
Clarence, Lionel?
Orville, I'm a little bit leery on different sizes. Today it's a summer residence. Next year it's sold, and we got a full-time resident. Are we not much better off to be safe and have a bona fide tank size for a full-time resident?
That we can look at, but I think that, some of the tanks that are in there right now are qualified, for all the requirements provincially, but they probably aren't quite as big as what a full-time resident would want. And my personal view is the tank should be a minimum of 1,500 gallons if you're a full-time resident. That's kind of what I consider the But there are some of those out there I know have the 750 and 1,000 gallon tanks, and they work very well for their purposes.
Go to Diane and back to Lionel.
Just provide some clarification again, in talking with the other development staff, that actually provincial code doesn't deal with seasonal use. It's based on size of home. So it doesn't matter if it's used once or if it's used every single day. So again, if the code is based on the size of the house, the number of the rooms, and the number of fixtures, it's going to tell you what size tank is going to happen. So that was one of the concerns I think as staff we were having, was that again, if you've got a 750 tank or liter tank in there already, and code now requires you to have a 1,200 gallon tank, you're going to have to replace those tanks. So while there is things there, they may not meet current code based on what they're required to put in.
Well, but if there is existing at 750 or 1,000, I mean, those are usually grandfathered. I mean, yes, the new ones definitely should meet whatever the code calls for.
Apparently they're not grandfathered, according to...
I'm not sure that's true. We can check that out. I mean, if they're not grandfathered, they're not grandfathered.
Again, each one is going to have to, when they go to deal with any kind of upgrade, it has to be upgraded to today's code. So there,
Right.
It doesn't matter as long as you don't touch it, but as soon as you have to upgrade it or change it, it has to meet current code. So again, this idea that you can utilize what's there, I think is a little misleading, that it's going to be a lot less expensive than it could possibly be.
And we really don't want to start all this all over again. Truly. Lionel.
So my concerns are the same as Clarence. And don't forget, these are mobile units also, so they can change in the future. So we do need to have some sort of a standard size that will accommodate changes that come as different residents are out there. So we, like Molly says, we don't want to go through this again. Let's get something here that fits all categories.
You don't have to. I mean, if now they upgraded to the current code based on what the current use is, how many bathrooms, how many bedrooms, stuff. If they apply for a development permit, that's part of the permitting process.
Okay, questions? Kelly?
My question is, Mr. Shantz, what reassurance can you give us that you represent both landowners now? My last conversation with you, I had concerns, right? So what can you tell us that's different?
They both signed off on this proposal. And the proposal is that the funds will be held in my trust account, so I think that's a good indication that they've signed off on it. Mr. Redelbach is not an issue. Every time, if I change something, I have to run it through Janet Mate's lawyer, and so far he's been very cooperative. But they have signed off on this proposal.
Brian?
The other thing you don't reference when you talk about the inspection process, would that be acceptable that you add that it's a county, like we use Park and Enterprises for our inspection, that it would be, because that's who is the umbrella organization for who do we deal with, and so I would be more comfortable if that was stated in there that it's a county approved inspection.
I don't have a problem with that. I mean, those are the details we can work out as we go through the IRP, because Lane wants us to sit down and work out those details, but I don't have an objection to that, though.
Alice?
Just a couple points of clarification. The inspection isn't done by our inspection agency. The inspection is actually done by an installer. And so the tanks have to all be pumped out, completely emptied, and then they're installed, or then they're inspected. So we got some estimates for both of those. So pumping out seems to me, now I'm not going to see it, Vibra quoted $15 disposal fee and $175 per hour charge for travel and the tank. A location within half an hour of Brooks would be about $175, and farther out is higher cost. So that's to pump out the tank. Then there's the fee by the installer to inspect the tank and provide. When I talked to him, he said he would not be able to provide a certificate. He would provide a letter saying that this tank is usable for the current time and has an estimated X number of years of life left in it. It's not anything that certifies this tank is 100% good to go, that they wouldn't put themselves in that kind of a position for it. So that's just some details just to keep in consideration when we're thinking about the logistics of getting these installed or these inspected. And actually, in terms of timelines with Brian, this kind of thing, the inspections with the pump out could be done between now and freeze up quite easily, so that we would know which tanks need to be replaced and which ones are actually meeting code currently.
The only problem with that timeline is the plan won't be finalized, I don't think, by then and registered. And it may well be some of these tanks have to be moved too. Yeah, Gordon would know what he's doing. But I am open to some variations.
Other questions or thoughts from staff, concerns? Tracy?
What is our kind of time frame on finalizing the plan? Like, where are we at with our, this is part of it. And then once we decide if we can use holding tanks, then we'll go to the next point?
Like if we agreed to this today, what would happen? How long a time frame, Lane?
What we would be doing after today's discussion concludes is sitting down with Mr. Shantz. We would go through the complete package of the proposed changes that have been submitted for the area redevelopment plan. We would have to determine which ones are in, which ones are out, come back to council with a renewed or revised area redevelopment plan. Council would then be required to review that and approve it. It can be approved through resolution. We would recommend, though, that it be approved through the formal bylaw adoption process, which would trigger first reading, public hearing, and then second and third reading after the public hearing. It's after the area redevelopment plan, in whatever form it's going to be, has been finally approved, then we would be in a position to go ahead and start the next step in that process, which would be the survey for the development, for the layout that has been outlined in the area redevelopment plan. Before we can even come back to council with a revised area redevelopment plan, we would have to sit down with Mr. Shantz and make sure that we're clear on what is going to be brought back to council and what is consistent with the proposal that has been submitted. Certainly the inspection of existing tanks can take place this summer. But Mr. Shantz has raised a valid point in that it's going to be your final lot lines that is going to determine where those tanks can actually be placed and still meet the setbacks from the residents that they're serving and from the lot lines that are going to be established for each of those residences. And we won't know those details until you have a final plan of survey that has been registered.
So, for example, this information here today would need to be part of that discussion further?
Well, if council provides direction that you're prepared to relax the requirement for a communal collection system, we would then go back and strike out those sections of the area redevelopment plan that reference a communal collection system. We would delete the references to water supply through the rural distribution system. All of those would be deleted from the area redevelopment plan. All of the other points that have been identified as well, the lot layout, the road alignment, the map that has been submitted by Mr. Shantz would basically replace the one that we have included with the original plan that was approved by council back in April. Those are all the details that we would work out. We would bring back that revised document to council. It would then reflect the consensus that has been reached between the county and the landowners for the format that that area redevelopment plan needs to meet.
Just for your information, like I'm available after next Tuesday for all of August. So I mean, if we can sit down, work those things out, and I don't foresee there being many other changes except the changes required to cover the water system and the sewer lines. I'll be very reasonable in the rest of it.
Because you've been really quite unreasonable up to now.
Thank you, Molly.
You're welcome. Any other thoughts on this? Diane, Alice?
So again, in discussion with planning staff, and I was just mentioning to Orville that we can give him the names of our installers and who inspects things. So I mean, we can help with that a fair bit. In terms of the lot lines, we can determine the integrity of the tanks and then adjust the lot lines accordingly. Like, that's not a huge deal. And it's something that, again, we feel can be done like as soon as we can get things figured out here. Because that is the main concern, is are these tanks suitable for what they're being used for? A couple other things that we talked about that just for you to be aware of, and we'll probably end up talking more with Orwell about them, has to do with the tenants who are going to stay as rentals and how it's going to work with their holding tanks, because our feeling is that if it's a rental, maybe it's better to inspect it and replace it if needed sooner rather than later, and that those we could do immediately because they're already there, they're staying there. With the people who are purchasing, that's fairly straightforward. That works out quite well in our view. The other concern that we have is to deal with the lots that are not being purchased and that will end up being vacant and have a tank there that's sitting in limbo. And so we're concerned that that gets dealt with as well, rather than waiting for the 2 years and it kicks in that the rentalbacks do it. We would also like to see those dealt with sooner rather than later. So with your permission, it's something that we can work out with Mr. Shantz and come back then when we bring the amendments.
Anything that's sooner than later with this will really please us all. Lionel.
Madam Chair, I have some concerns about using existing tanks. Reason being that this council is going to put their stamp of approval on this project. And those tanks, as we all know, have a lifespan. They don't last forever. Anybody who's had experience with replacing them knows that. And so I would feel a lot more comfortable knowing that they were all replaced with a new standard that we accept. I guess I'm going to go there, and that's it.
Clarence?
I guess I have a few concerns, and they're probably unknowns. First of all, is the 10 grand, is it sufficient? Secondly, I guess you don't really know how many people are going to buy until they come up with the dollars. So something above 10 grand could cause a problem. Not enough people not wanting to buy could be a problem. If the numbers are good, then it'll all work. There's also a thing in there that says that maximum of 360,000, which makes me leery. I know we have to do something. I applaud what's been done here. I think it will work if we get the right numbers. On the other hand, it may all fall apart if we don't get cooperation. So it's all good to plan, but when the dollars have to come, it's quite often the case that things get a little harder. So just some cautions, I guess.
Yes, and I think we're all, the experience just hasn't been good. So anything that can go wrong, I guess we worry will go wrong. So we're not really being pessimistic or negative, just realistic about what the last decade plus has been like. But we're moving forward. Lionel, your tank concern, I think, is fair. I mean, I can understand if somebody's put one in the last couple of years. It's been in the ground for, I don't know, 10 years or so. But who are we to say if they're all going to be inspected? And we're going to leave it to the experts, I guess, to decide whether or not the tank is good or not. If we go with this. And Clarence, the $360,000, I'm surprised right off the bat that there's 20 people interested in buying their properties. Because I've certainly never had that feeling when we've had this conversation before, but that's good news, I guess. But again, what if that, anyhow, a lot of what ifs. Okay, other questions or comments? We have to today decide whether or not basically we're comfortable with most of this document that Orville has put together going forward.
Well, if I could make just a quick summary of the advantages to this proposed changes. Number one, the cost for residents will be reduced to the point most of them will be able to stay. I've heard the comments, well, what if this goes sideways? But if you spend $4 million plus and do it and it goes sideways, the risk of the county is far greater than it is under this proposal. This proposal almost, I think, eliminates any real risk to the county. They're going to be taking over many of these lots. I think the objectives of the county are met. In other words, orderly development, and I agree, it's been a hodgepodge out there. And the removal of non-compliant wastewater disposal systems and removal of septic fields. Those are very legitimate goals, and I think that this proposal takes care of that. The other thing, and you've alluded to a little bit, one of the reasons I want to see this done, Molly, I know you've been dealing with it for 10 years. And really, in all honesty, there's been very little cooperation from the owners, residents, etc. I agree with that. I think we've got them now to the point where this can proceed on an orderly basis with cooperation between the owners, the residents, and the county. And that's really my goal in this. And hopefully everybody else involved has the same goals I do. Thank you. You've been very patient with me over the last number of sessions.
Anything else, councillors? So we, can't remember, you want resolution today on this?
Basically, that council just provide direction as to which amendments you want us to proceed with, and then we will come back. I would expect that if Mr. Shantz is available, that we should be in a position to come back with a revised area redevelopment plan in September.
All right.
So what exactly do we need to do today? Are we still needing to have a motion that says we will go to the holding tanks and then work out the details? Or do we want more than that?
No, what I would be looking for is a motion for direction to proceed with amendments to the area redevelopment plan based on the submissions that have been provided by Mr. Shantz. And that gives us the opportunity to sit down with him, work through those changes that are needed, and when we come back, they would all be reflected in that amended area redevelopment plan. Your final decision will be made when that revised plan comes back to you as to whether or not you're going to approve it in the revised form that it will be in or not.
Okay, so I've heard a number of things today. I think we have to speed up the inspection process, but it should be done in 2018. I also hear that we want legitimate holding tanks, not just for summer or winter residents or whatever you want to call it, but for something that meets code today. I think probably those are the two main things that we're questioning as far as what Orwell's presented. So I think that has to be included.
Anything else, Kelly?
Yeah, just as part of your summary, Clarence, recommendations or direction for rental lots needs to be also included in that discussion and that plan.
Anything else that you folks focusing in on what today's discussion want further discussion on or clarification when it comes back for us? Diane.
I guess I maybe have one other suggestion. I know that in guarantee of compliance number 5 that there's a discussion about a development agreement. Again, a lot of the details about how this would fall out may be required to be in that development agreement, and it may be worthwhile having a development agreement prepared that would outline everything, everyone's responsibilities, and how this is all going to work in an agreement that may come back in concert with this ARP, so that we have a guarantee of that this is actually going to occur prior to changing the ARP.
Kelly?
Right. But just speaking about guarantees, Mr. Shantz, what guarantee do you have that you'll be in the driver's seat? Because personally, I like you driving. And my biggest fear, or my pessimistic voice, is saying, yeah, we could go along for another 6 months, and then the owners could say, you're out of the driver's seat, and the county's back at square one again. Do you have any guarantees from the owners that you'll be there driving?
I can assure you, with Ron's side of it, I'll be there driving. And with Janet's, again, her lawyer's been assuring me that as long as we keep her informed, as long as we have a reasonable plan, there shouldn't be any issues with it. And within the next 2 weeks, I'm hoping to have a definitive agreement between the two of them as to how they will proceed between themselves. And in that agreement, I will try to build in that I'm in charge all the way through.
So what I've heard then going forward, the timelines, the faster the better. The tanks sort of for all need to be considered. The rental sort of needs to be fleshed out more, and the development permits as well. So are those all things that can be discussed, Orville, Lane?
Yes, we'd certainly anticipated that those would all be details that we were going to have that included in that conversation with Mr. Shantz when we meet. We fully agree that it is necessary for us to work out the details of a development agreement at this point so that all of these things can be wrapped up in one complete package.
So, Ellen?
Sorry, so you need today a motion to proceed with concerns being taken care of.
To proceed with revising the area redevelopment plan based on the submissions that have been submitted.
I'm willing to make that motion.
Okay. Anything else? All in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion is carried. So the next phase of this will be to put this all together, staff Orville, and bring it back to us. Good. Thank you, Orville. You haven't been that unreasonable. Just a little. All right. Where are we at here? I think we are at item 11.72. And won't take us long, and we'll get to Mark. So that is the AUMA convention, which this year is in Red Deer for the first time ever. And normally we send a couple of people to it. Some of you have been already. Some of you haven't. September 26th to 28th. And Ariana has provided us some information. The schedule is there. Anne-Marie and I last year attended. I don't know who did the year before. I think Brian and Tracy, maybe?
I went by myself the first year. The first year that we've attended, I went by myself, and that was in Calgary.
Yeah, Gordon and I went when it was in Edmonton.
Edmonton?
Yep.
Ellen?
I personally haven't been yet.
So you'd be interested?
Sure.
Okay. Anyone else? 2. Hubie, you're interested? So we need to make a motion to approve Hubie and Ellen's attendance at the AUMA convention as a function of council. Lionel will move that. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Puts us to 12 and municipal services business.
Well, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Quick update since the report's typed up for you. Truck drivers are making excellent progress on the regular road resurfacing program. They've also completed the trucking of aggregates for the road shoulder pull program, so those things are coming along really well for staff. Grader operators completed the dust abatement program on July 12th. Unfortunately, about 19 working days this year between the two crews versus an objective of 10 to 12 working days to get that all done. Some of that again was due to our issues with product and malfunctions and breakdowns with contracted services provided equipment and whatnot. We do try to be as timely as we can. We know it puts some stress and strain not just on staff but on the ratepayers based on expectations and stuff. So that's where that one's at. Maintenance operators and seasonal staff, been working with the operations foreman, 29 work orders, 19 signs, 19 post replacement, 3 brush control, and 5 drainage projects. They also participated in the dust abatement program where seasonal laborers are performing the surveying, operating some of the packers and stuff like that alongside our full-time staff members. Shoulder pull program was 50 kilometers. It kicked off June 20th and was completed on July 26th. So that was really good progress with that. Second year in with the same contractor, and the things are coming along very well with the quality of work that they're outputting. Rural water side of things, not much has changed with the numbers on that, sitting at 74% active of all locations that are registered. No quotes, probably I think first month that Jeff hasn't provided any quotes to anybody looking for connection that didn't participate in the sign up and registration program. Alberta Transportation County Partnership Project remains with ISL Engineering and Land Services. This is the biggest one that Jeff's been involved in. Highway 873 and 535 work commenced the week of July 25th. They've been doing some grading work, bringing up the clay base of the road towards Kinbrook Island, and there's another location along the road as well, so that the sags and crests are within tolerances of good engineering practices. What else can I say about that? I guess the most important thing is that not only ourselves but the province of Alberta, there's always lots of messages out there regarding construction zones. You see the billboards with little children on it saying my daddy works here, my parent works here, or whatever. We've had a number of instances where motorists are not adhering to construction signage that's in place, which includes electronic message boards, the hard signs that are mounted on posts, flag persons as well. Some motorists have actually had some choice words for some of the flag people prior to making their own decisions and carrying on. Some of those people will be the proud recipients of tickets in the mail, which the RCMP dealt with promptly after it happened, that also come with demerit points. With that, there's been some additional efforts on enforcement activities around Highway 873 with the work that is ongoing, and our own municipal enforcement officers have issued 7 tickets to date, some of which may or may not include demerit points. And what their findings are in-house is that it's not anyone local, it is those persons from outside of the county of Newell boundaries. So I'm glad to hear that our locals are more respectful than the visitors, but we are trying to do what we can do. I know Jeff has put a media release out there. It's been all over the radio, it's all over our website, it's been distributed through our social media streams, Facebook, Twitter, things like that. Really trying to raise awareness around the construction site. Just kind of resonates with me a little bit because we're relatively low on our traffic volumes and stuff throughout our region, with the exceptions of Highway 1 and 36, which are Alberta Transportation's jurisdiction and stuff. And here we are working on an Alberta Transportation project, and if it really makes me beg the question what infractions they find on a regular basis throughout their projects across the province of Alberta, and how motorist attitudes are towards construction zones and the people that are working on them. Because what I'm finding to date is shocking, to say the least, in our region. I know that maybe 7 tickets doesn't seem extremely high, but we generally don't issue any tickets in our construction zones or have near the problems that the staff of our contractor on site is experiencing so far. So
it is shocking. Like, I've never heard of people not taking guidance from the people, especially people holding
yes
stop signs or slow or conducting the traffic. So it's a whole new.
There's been some near misses, I believe, on site from motorists and some of the construction equipment, from what the CPOs have said, that people just choosing to not follow the direction, and makes things tough, and it slows progress of the construction crew as well.
And it's very dangerous.
Yeah, so, hoping for that end of season deadline to see everything complete, and we don't want to sacrifice quality over quantity in any regards, but really this is short-term pain for getting to one primary location, Rolling Hills Reservoir, in a year-long construction project or something like that, for what the benefits are going to be for the next 20, 30 years or longer. So I wanted to bring that up and put it in front of council in a way to make you aware of what not just Jeff, but the contractor and the staff are dealing with out on site there, and the action that we're trying to take with it. Jeff's also been working with Alberta Transportation through the overlay of Highway 876 from Highway 1 and through the Hamlet of Tilly. We are getting some additional curb gutter, sidewalk, crosswalk improvements based on our discussion at last council meeting. So Jeff's been involved in a lot of that to make sure that we're being heard and that the safety of people are being looked out for. So, Municipal Enforcement Department, previous month's Alberta Traffic Safety Calendar focus was impaired driving. Unfortunately, our CPOs don't deal with impaired drivers, but when they do come across those instances, they have to do what they can, but it's really turn it over to the RCMP to deal with. So they really focused on the secondary matters of cycling, construction zones, and off-highway vehicles. Thankfully, in this period, only 1 ticket was issued for any of those in July, because these other matters of 873 have been at the commencement of August and stuff here. August, they'll be focusing on young drivers, distracted drivers, with aggressive drivers and motorcycles being secondary focus. Additionally, on top of those areas of focus, there's been 7 tickets and 11 warnings issued, over 42 investigations completed by the 2 staff members. Their department has also been participating in the rural bike rodeos held in conjunction with the RCMP, Health Promotion Facilitator and Safe Communities Facilitator in the Hamlets of Tilly and Rolling Hills. Nothing else in the County of Newell is planned at this time through those groups, but I imagine there might be some time in the future. And we also had an audit carried out of our Municipal Enforcement Department by the Solicitor General's Peace Officer Law Enforcement Oversight Branch. I can honestly say at the time of the debriefing on the same day, nothing significant was brought to our attention that would need any changing or attention moving forward. So nice to finally have that audit after something like 9 years of employing peace officers, considering that audit is supposed to take place 6 months after we become an authorized employer of peace officers. So we're doing well. Fleet services, they continue with process and procedure mapping, and they're preparing for the receipt of the 7 fleet vehicles that were set to arrive through Enterprise Fleet Management through our agreement and partnership there. So they'll be getting things rigged up so that we can get staff back on the road with the new units, and once they're out the door with those, and they'll be stripping the other units so that they can be sent for sale and see what we get for revenues out of that. As part of this, we've also looked into, as a group, what makes the most sense from an efficiency and cost-effective approach. I think council knows that I've taken upon myself to decal up the municipal services fleet trucks and stuff like that. If we're only going to have these units for 12 months, we're going to revert back to the old standard of the smaller decals on the doors and stuff like that. And that way we're not spending money just to flip it in 12 months and have that revenue spent on pretty much nothing. So if we can find something else that works, that'd be great. But I know there's been discussion of magnets and stuff in the past. I've heard terrible things of magnets being stolen and people being imposters out in areas when they don't need to be. And I will say that the new units are all aluminum. Magnets don't stick to aluminum, so they're either going to be a sticker or they're going to be nothing. So I made the Reeve aware of that as well with future parades and stuff. The decals that go with that are going to have to change to be something different probably.
Mark, I have to question the fact that if we keep the vehicle, we think it's important to have good identification to let people know who we are. And now that we're renting or leasing and it's a short period of time, we've sort of thrown that out the window. Isn't that all part and parcel of having of going the cheaper route? Shouldn't have been, if it's really a valuable asset to us to have that identification, shouldn't we be keeping it?
Personally, I do like it because it's free advertisement for the County of Newell. And some days I think perhaps we don't take the cheapest avenues in promoting ourselves as what we could. That's my own personal belief. Having the website, having the decals, being visible to the public and stuff. I'm just trying to be extremely mindful of how much we invest into the vehicles to 12 months later see them leave, and again pay people to strip decals off and do all of that. And if we don't do it ourselves, we're going to pay Enterprise to do that on the back end to strip those things. If that is something that council would like to see us maintain, I'm all for it if that's a preferred direction. And I'm open to any comments on that whatsoever. Just trying to be mindful. We're also going to be, as I've identified here, trying to step away from the two-way radio installations. I know that there's some rumorings going on in the news nationwide and stuff about what's going to happen with two-way radios in the future and them being a distraction in the vehicle and everybody moving to cellular devices and text messages and hands-free talking and things like that, where the two-way radio have to pick up and deal with and hang back up on a hanger. We're going to give that a trial run too with these units coming in to see if there is any effect on how management interacts with staff throughout the day, and if it's a gain by not paying for radios and not installing radios, or whether we need to continue with that cost and having them installed in our vehicles. I know when we look at lessons learned from the Slave Lake fires and stuff, they lost their two-way radio communication, but they found that they could text, but they couldn't communicate over cell phone through cellular calls, but they could still text. So trying to be mindful of those things too, because we do have some processes and procedures with Canadian agencies on radio frequencies, and we have to maintain a radio list and which radios we have and like serial numbers and everything, which ones are programmed with what frequencies and channels and stuff. If we can reduce some of those costs and things as well for the organization, then I think we're moving in the right direction as well. So long as we're not losing things on the operational perspective of what we need in redundancy of being able to communicate with one another, especially in emergency services or emergency situations, I should say. I'm open to anything. We just really talked about what we can do to keep the cost as low as possible and be efficient in the more frequent turnover of fleet if we continue down that path based on what we learned going through the first cycle.
So when you say that, Mark, obviously having County of Newell on our trucks will still be important, but maybe not a bunch of other fancy
Yeah,
schmancy
the rest of the
decals.
decals we won't be. It'll.
So give it a
be,
try and see how it goes.
I haven't, I haven't heard anything in, well, I want to say it's probably been 6-7 years that we've been running those decals on the trucks. I haven't heard anything different from the public in those 6 or 7 years about the look of our trucks. It hasn't increased any phone calls to the office reporting anybody for doing anything.
I think the only thing that people ever remember with trucks is, remember when the county Newell used to be all yellow with green on them, and all the trucks were the same. So, I don't think the decals make much of a difference.
And with this one, just so council knows, you did hear from Aaron at Enterprise with this presentation. We won't be driving white trucks anymore, neither. We are driving anything but white or black. So these are coming back as red from Municipal Services anyway. Guess we'll see what we get in the return on investment when they go for sale, because I don't know. But they'll look similar to what Terry's truck were, or what the older trucks were that we had before. So. In closing, road tours are complete. Departments are now in the process of preparing the multi-year budgets for the upcoming 2019 interim budget process all the way out to 2022. Records management in all departments is a priority, and with that, the assistance of other county department staff, 16 banker boxes of hard copy municipal services agreements and approvals have been gone through. I think we started out with 45 originally that LC has been dealing with, but she wrapped up another 16 here not that long ago. And another 5 banker boxes of rural water easements she's gone through. So we've significantly reduced our paper records, got them into Laserfiche, which is a corporate goal, and that feels really good, because then our next step is to get all of our electronic files from each of us going into the right spots in Laserfiche as well. So I can say that I did get an update further to the permit activity statistics for council, and in July it was 275 permits, so a total for year to date is 1,830. With a forecasted year end of 3,137 permits, which would be an 8% decrease over last year's permits. So not far off, and that's pretty reasonable in my opinion. So other than that, I think Jeff would like an opportunity to address council with updates available through Highway 873 and gauge some interest on that.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on Mark's comments a little bit. It made me sick to my stomach at our first construction meeting. The contractors have been working down there for 15 days now, and after less than a week of them working, they had already run into 4 incidents with motorists disobeying the signage in the construction zones, and that didn't sit very well. And they were following up with our municipal enforcement officers as well as RCMP, and then I went yesterday Tuesday for a construction meeting. They've been working for a total of 15 working days by then, and they were up to 14 incidents with vehicles in the construction zone. So again, just to reiterate, right, they're out there like everybody else doing the job, and to say it again, obey the signage, and hopefully we can get that message put out there to the people. Speed fines are doubled in construction zones. Enforcement officers do not need to be there to issue tickets. Multiple witnesses on site can trigger a ticket being issued to motorists. So again, just wanted to get that out there and reiterate the concerns with it, because I think we've all worked on the side of the road or been on the side of the road stranded or anything, even in the construction zone, and cars traveling by faster than they're supposed to makes things a little uneasy at the end of the workday. Another small update that I had, again, Mark said the 876. We went through the detailed design last week in Lethbridge with Transportation and ISL Engineering. I hope to have it out that we can get it out to tender here in September, and most likely the goal will be to get it back in front of council in October sometime for an award to a contractor. There will be 2 bridge files to work on over the winter months here before they can start doing any work. That's again while the EID has the water shut off. So it's looking great. Our estimates and our construction costs that we got on the 873,535 are falling within the budget that was agreed to with transportation right now. So we look forward to monitoring that and keeping it in line and pushing forward.
Thank you. Questions? Hubie?
Just a question about the violators. Were most of those campers?
I can't speak to the number that were campers. I do know some people did enter into Kinbrook Island. Some people were issued tickets at their campsite in Kinbrook Island once enforcement officers got there. But I can't say if they were towing a camper, campers themselves, anything like that. But as Mark did mention, from our enforcement people, it was more out-of-town people as opposed to in-town.
Yeah, because I know over at the Rolling Hills Reservoir, people are sitting there in their cars waiting all night to get spots, so they're pretty desperate about camping out there.
Just a strange situation to me that people would risk lives, but I guess we'll continue to monitor. Anything else for these fellows aside from motion to accept their reports? Tracy moves. All in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Jeff. And I see Kevin Halstead and Jennifer are back and our planning staff. So
Well, just to move forward with what we were discussing this morning, Kevin has taken a look at the information from previously for the market value that's he is going to assign to this road allowance closure, and the options for council to consider are to accept his market value assessment or to go with Kevin's proposal or suggestion to advertise at less than market value for sale.
all right. Thanks, Alice. So Kevin, what did you figure out?
Okay, just I've never done a depreciated value on septic system in all my assessment career, so this is something new. So I did find a couple of sources. Since we don't know what the septic tank is made out of, if it's a steel one, the age life is 20 years on that, so that means the life expectancy is 20 years. If it's a concrete one, the life expectancy is 40 years. Assuming that the Hayworth mobile home was installed in 1977 as the age of the houses that we have, and the services were put there, that makes the services about 41 years old. So what I decided to do is to go in between the 20 and 40 years and give it a 30-year age life. I only considered the actual septic tank and the field. So if we used the services value of $40,000 that I stated earlier, reduce that by 50% so that the septic field and septic tank are only worth $20,000. That gives me a remaining depreciated value of 27% at a fair condition for the field. So my original value of $18,450 will be reduced to $13,850. I considered the septic tank and field at today's value being that old at $4,600. That works out to $40,600 per acre, that definitely falls in the range of the appraisal value that we stated before of $37,000 to $58,000. I believe that these two lots, if the Hayworths do end up with it, will be consolidated, so there won't be any new services put in. There's only going to be the existing one unless it needs to be renovated. Thank you.
So the number you came up with for the market value is 13,850?
That's correct.
That's for the hockey stick shape, the L-shaped lot.
No, that's an additional to, includes the shape of the field and the reduction for the septic services.
That's the fair market value for the extra lot, the road allowance, the whatever.
The whole thing.
The whole thing, yeah. Yep. Thank you. Questions, folks? And originally you had set that at 18 something, correct?
Yeah, 18,450.
Thank you.
I think we have to be careful of setting a precedent for the adjacent landowners also in this case.
For what?
Setting a precedent for the adjacent landowners just because of fairness. So that's why I came up with the value I have right now.
Okay. Questions, comments? Jennifer, do you have anything you wanted to add or questions about this?
No, not at this time. So how long do we have to decide if we are going to go through with this?
I don't think there's a time limit, is there? No. I think why we're here was we wanted to, our planning department wanted to confirm that in fact as a council we would sell it. And so that was sort of the application idea for this. And then obviously the price has become the issue. So, yeah. So Jennifer, then you have no other questions of Kevin, or you just have to?
Nope, there's no further questions.
Okay. Council, you have to decide if you accept this as a fair market value, and I guess we usually accept what our assessment department comes up with, but we do have the option always, as we discussed this morning, to advertise it also. So, Lionel.
Well, Kevin, you've done quite a bit of work on this, obviously. And we have you hired to do this for us. And so I would like to make a motion that we accept Kevin's numbers on the assessment and sell this at that value.
Discussion. Anybody have any thoughts? Brian.
Well, I'm just curious about the motion. Do we need a motion only if it's accepted, right? Like that's the value that's been determined. The only time we need a motion, I think, is if we're going to do something outside of that assessed value. So maybe I'm wrong, but don't see the need to vote on something that's Kevin's presented as information determining the market value. And, the ball's basically in Jennifer, your court as far as whether you choose to accept this or not.
That would be accurate, Kevin? You don't have to, let's accept that as the price. Kelly.
We do have an RFD in front of us with two options. One's to provide approval to proceed with this application as a road closure and sale, or to refuse the road closure application.
Kelly, what? Alice.
The RFD, just to clarify, was from the last meeting when this was brought forward as approval to proceed. So that was really just for information purposes. So I apologize if it made things confusing. Really all we're looking for right now is the whole market value idea, all right?
So basically the land's for sale at that price. And so back to Jennifer and Jesse, right? To figure out what their next move is. Anything else, Alice?
With council's permission, I would like to prepare an amendment to the road closure and lease or sale policy with prices based on, I'd like to sit down with Diane and with Kevin Halstead and look at how do we assign value to these parcels of land so that then it's in policy, and in that way I can actually say to Jennifer right up front, this is how much it's going to cost, as opposed to I have to go to the assessor and get this done, and if that's not suitable then you could go to an appraiser. And how we have policy set up right now is that I have to go to Kevin Halstead every time to get a market value assessment. If it was in policy and based on, for example, proximity to an urban area, so that land closer to an urban area might be more valuable than land that's out in a dry land grass area, and that then we would assess, or we would provide market value based on location. It would take it out of Kevin's view, but he would have input into this. And it would make things more consistent when we're discussing this with potential road allowance purchasers. So if council is amenable to that, I could prepare that in policy and bring it back at another time.
Yeah, I guess I just am confused because it's always worked. Like, what's different today?
It has worked to an extent. What you probably don't see is when I talk to people about the market value and they don't agree with it, the option is they can go get an appraiser, and typically it costs more for them to get an appraiser than it's worth to just purchase the land. In this case, because the land is in a hamlet, the value was so much more than what we typically end up selling the land for, and so that became more of an issue. We don't typically sell land in hamlets or sell road allowances in hamlets. So I think that's partly why this one came to the forefront so much.
Well, I don't know, Brian.
I guess not sitting in your chair, Alice, it's we don't see the same things, and I'm sympathetic to that, but I guess I look at it and say, well, how many have we dealt with? And not very many. And so why would we create a policy that there's another 5 pages in that book that I want to throw in the garbage some days. So no, not in the garbage. I'd like to reduce it. I keep telling you, reduce it. You get to add 5 pages, but you get to have to take 10 out. Anyways, I personally like the way this comes before us once in a while, and maybe keeps us a little sharp. And for all intents and purposes, I think the process works. You know, the communication between our assessment and yourself, and if they need to get that information, we have it. And it might, and it gives the applicant also the opportunity to appeal it if they don't think it's right, and it doesn't happen very often.
Any other thoughts? Doesn't mean the conversation can never be brought up again, Alice. Just that maybe you should ask us at the start of a day rather than at the end of a day the next time. Policy, you know, being our favorite. But yeah. Thank you, Jennifer. You're clear? You know what you can do going forward here? Okay. Perfect. Thank you for your patience today. Thank you, Kevin, Alice, Diane, Shannon. All right. Are we actually at the post-agenda stage? Please check your agendas for me and make sure that we've covered everything. Just seems like my paper's one big mess. And I think we're at item, what's that? My paper's at item 13, post-agenda items. I just wanted to quickly, the whole tax issue today, before it gets forgotten, and the way, you know, people decide to pay, and the idea of refunding money, I guess I'm not in favor of. I think it's up to the people that are paying the bill to decide how they're going to pay the bill. But I just mentioned to Adam and Colin today that we would quickly talk about it later. So this is it. Any other thoughts on it? Or call it, whatever your name is.
I'll tell the rest of my story and my experience. So when staff members said, well, you'll be assessed this penalty, I says, well, I guess I'll pay it in November, and walked out. And they had the same option.
Yeah.
So I also was very mad at myself.
Well, I'm sure they were too. Lionel?
Well, it just shows how inept they are in their operation. If they missed a tax bill that size, then
and then
they really
paid it.
And then paid it. Yes. They knew they were wrong.
Yeah. Kevin?
Madam Reeve, I don't know how you'd introduce a policy or a decision on something like that, because all kinds of people get in cash flow trouble and say, tack another 3%, tack another, I want my money back, and tack another 8% on in November if I don't pay. But I don't know how you'd get into that. I've never heard of a municipality doing that.
No.
Unless there's some duress circumstance for it.
No, I agree. Okay, we have some information items in here. You guys here for in camera? Good, because you had me worried that I'd missed a big item. Anything else? Well, Lionel?
Well, I did make a motion and we didn't deal with it. So either I rescind it or we have to vote on it, one or the other.
That was about
on the land sale.
Okay. Do you think you could rescind it?
I will, but it needs to go in the minutes, that's all.
It never went in?
I think if you withdraw your motion, it's like the motion never happened.
Good enough. It's gone. All right, motion to move in camera you can make now, Lionel. All right, all in favor of Lionel's motion?